This is the special meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Excuse me. Let the record reflect Commissioners Johnson, Soboroff, Figueroa Villa, and McLean Hill are present, and we have a quorum. We will begin today with item number 2.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to item number 1. There's one consent agenda item. Do we have any comments on that item?
Excuse me, sir. Let me check. We have one. We have Mr. Herman.
Mr. Herman? Do you have a comment on item 2A? Consent agenda item related to the funding for the 21st Century Community Policing Training? Implicit bias
Yes,
training?
good morning, Commissioners. I'm looking forward that police training is adequate and provides the officers here that are rank and file with the benefits of overtime and compensation pay if they run over the clock at these so-called community police training. After all, it is our fine rank and file that have been holding off to get the mayor to pay them their asking price. You know, you can't have good policing if good police don't get paid to do their job within a 5-day week, as opposed to work all this extra overtime and not get paid. We have the finest police officers in Los Angeles, but yet they're the most underpaid and overworked. They should be spending time with their children and family. And that's my consideration, recognizing and dealing with the rank and file to implicit bias as it relates to community policing, as well as the issues relevant to the 21st policing on the benefit of Angelenos in Los Angeles. And with my remaining 45 seconds, I just personally like to thank all the rank and file. I hope the mayor hears this shout out that you should be paid immediately. Stop holding back on the overtime pay. Stop holding back on any pay. And you should be paying our officers double of what they're being paid so they can stop harassing people like myself who are homeless and live in the street and don't have jobs. And we have to pay for our dog license and have a lot of responsibilities, and not like billionaires, developers who get away with not paying for their dog license. Although I'm a little off topic, but I'm relating back to the issue of the $82,250,000 on behalf of the Los Angeles Police Department. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank the California Endowment and the Wasserman Foundation for funding this implicit bias training. And I want to thank everyone in the department who has gone through it. We've gotten excellent feedback on it. Thanks to our donors for making it possible. I will move the item. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have multiple seconds. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, let's go to item 3A.
Item number 3, regular agenda items. We have Mr. Herman has a comment card on all items.
Okay. I would like items 3A, 3B, and 3C read into the record.
Thank you. Item number 3A, Department's report dated September 21st, 2017, relative to the recommendation for the Medal of Valor for bravery to Officer Oscar Cordoba, serial number 37022, Officer Edwin Rocha, serial number 38526, Officer Henry Marin, serial number 38755, and Officer Brian Wagoner, serial number 41143 of Southwest area. Item number 3B.
Well, let's just start with 3A since we have comments on each of them.
Okay.
Good morning, Captain Walters.
Good morning, sir. If I may.
Yes.
It is recommended that the Honorable Board of Police Commissioners award the Medal of Valor to Officers Oscar Cordoba, Edwin Rocha, Henry Marin, and Brian Wagner for their heroic actions on August 20th, 2013. On August 20th, 2013, at 9:20 in the morning, Frankie Sullivan was watering her front lawn at 4801 South Normandy Avenue. Frankie's estranged husband, Patrick Sullivan, drove to her residence and parked his vehicle across the street. Sullivan walked over to the mouth of the driveway and began talking to Frankie. He asked her to allow him to come into the house for a cup of coffee. When she refused, Sullivan pulled out a .25 caliber pistol and shot Frankie on the right side of the head. The bullet grazed Frankie's head and penetrated her right ear. Frankie immediately grabbed the right side of her head and bent down screaming. Sullivan fired several more rounds at Frankie. Fearing for her life, Frankie ran down the driveway to the detached rear residence where her 40-year-old son, Mario, lives. Frankie ran and screamed, "Help, help, I've been shot." Hearing her screams, Mario opened his front door, brought Frankie into his house, quickly closed the door, and called 911. Meanwhile, Sullivan had returned to his car and reloaded his gun. From inside the house, while still on the phone with 911, Mario could see Sullivan walking down the driveway to the house. Sullivan shot into the house. Mario quickly moved Frankie to the bedroom in the back of the house and placed her on the floor. At 9:25 hours, Communications Division broadcasted that a shooting had just occurred at the location. Southwest Patrol officers Marin and Rocha and Cordoba and Wagner responded code 3. 2 minutes later, Communications Division broadcasted additional information that Sullivan was shooting in the backyard. As officers Cordoba and Wagner arrived on scene, a frantic neighbor flagged them down and warned, quote, "Be prepared, he has a gun." Officers Marin and Rocha soon arrived. Officer Rocha armed himself with a shotgun and led the officers tactically down the driveway toward the backyard. A wooden pedestrian gate separated the front house from the backyard. The officers could see over the fence that Sullivan was walking around in the backyard. As Sullivan approached the rear house, the officers could see that he had a small, semi-automatic chrome pistol in his right hand, held in a low-ready position. All 4 officers yelled, "Drop the gun," numerous times. Sullivan ignored the officers and turned towards the rear residence. Sullivan appeared to look into one of the windows and then shot 1 round into the window. Screaming could now be heard coming from inside the residence, alerting the officers that there were potential victims inside. Officers again told Sullivan to drop the gun, but Sullivan turned toward the officers and pointed the pistol at them. In immediate defense of their lives, Officer Rocha fired several shotgun rounds, and Officers Cordoba and Marin fired several handgun rounds at Sullivan to stop the threat. Sullivan fell to the ground on his left side with the pistol still in his right hand. Sullivan looked over his right shoulder at the officers and rolled toward his right side. He then raised his right arm back up in the direction of the officers and pointed the pistol at them. Believing that Sullivan was going to shoot them, Officers Cordoba and Wagner fired their service weapons at Sullivan. Sullivan dropped the gun and rolled onto his stomach. Officers were then able to handcuff Sullivan and recover the handgun. As testament to just how frantic the situation was, video and audio evidence from the scene revealed that only 49 seconds elapsed from the time the officers arrived on scene to the conclusion of the officer-involved shooting. Officers immediately requested an ambulance for Sullivan, who later succumbed to his wounds at the hospital. Frankie was rushed to the hospital where she was stabilized and eventually recovered from her wounds. Mario and all the officers miraculously escaped unharmed. All the involved officers are to be commended for their handling of this high-stress, rapidly evolving situation. If not for their quick and unselfish actions, it is likely that Sullivan would have succeeded in his murderous attempt to slaughter his estranged family. The officers' actions and professionalism displayed their character and brought honor to themselves and the Los Angeles Police Department. The courageous actions of Officer Oscar Cordoba, Edwin Rocha, Henry Marin, and Brian Wagner reflect the highest standards of the Los Angeles Police Department. Their bravery, decisiveness, and life-saving actions are worthy of the department's highest award for valor.
Thank you. I believe we have a comment on this item. Do we have a comment on this item?
We have Mr. Herman.
Is there something you'd like to say?
Well, first of all, let's recognize the officer that had passed away for 1 second up there in the valley. Our condolences to his family. And now on the department's Valor of Medal declaration, based on Ms. Frankie's account, and that, as the report pointed out, dealing with August 2013. You see, bravery comes from men who have to cope with stress in the real world, such as myself and Wayne Spindler, for the record. But we deal with matters that can adversely change depending on the situation in which our officers responded correctly. See, when it comes to the valor of serial number 37022 and officer number 38526, And not to forget Officer 38755, along with officer number, serial number 41143, regarding Southwest area. They should have been recognized on the spot on that day with a $150 gift certificate thanking them for their valor. Along with this presentation to come, I guess we have a mic test. Is it working?
You're off topic, sir.
Pardon me?
You're off topic.
No, I'm dealing with the serial number, sir. I'll go by names of the officers. Officer Oscar Cordoba. Let's go with Officer Edwin Rocha. Let's go with Officer Henry Marin. Let's go with Officer Brian Wagner. Thank you, gentlemen, because I sure hell know that this commission doesn't thank you enough.
Thank you. The actions of the officers were clearly heroic and worthy of this award, and I enthusiastically approve the department's report. Do we have a second? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you.
Please let the record reflect Commissioner Shane Goldsmith is now present. We're now on item number 3B, Department's report dated September 21st, 2017, relative to the recommendation for the Medal of Valor for Bravery to Officer Ramon Lomelai, serial number 39226, and Officer Rodolphe Ledesma, serial number 37792 of 77th Street.
Good morning, Commissioners. Deputy
Morning.
Chief John Peters from Police Sciences and Training Bureau of the privilege of reading this recommendation for the Medal of Valor for a couple of our officers. It is recommended that the Honorable Board of Police Commissioners award the Medal of Valor to Officers Ramon Lomelli and Rodolfo Ledesma for their heroic actions on September the 8th of 2015. On Monday, September the 8th, 2015, at approximately 0200 hours, 77th Street Patrol police officers to Rodolfo Ledesma and Ramon Lomelli responded to a radio call, assault with a deadly weapon, domestic violence, at 1131 West 81st Place. The reporting party's husband, Perkins, threatened to kill her and had written a suicide letter. His car was a blue Volkswagen Golf parked in front of the location. Perkins was mentally ill and owned an unknown caliber revolver. Upon arrival, Ledesma and Lomelli saw Perkins' unoccupied Volkswagen Golf parked on the north side of 81st Place. As the officers approached the house, they heard arguing coming from the front porch and multiple gunshots. They also saw a muzzle flash from Perkins directed towards the front door and heard a woman screaming. Officer Lomelli ran toward the front hood of the Volkswagen Golf for cover, while Officer Ledesma took a position of cover to the rear. Perkins diverted his attention toward the officers, still armed with the handgun. Perkins yelled and raised his right arm towards Ledesma and Lomelli. To save the life of the victim as well as their own, Ledesma and Lomelli were forced to discharge their handguns at Perkins to stop the deadly threat. They ceased fire when Perkins went down to the ground behind a pillar on the east side of the porch, but they were unable to determine if he was hit. Officer Ledesma broadcast over his radio, "Officer needs help, shots fired," and Lomelli broadcasted that the suspect was down and that a victim was possibly injured inside the residence. Once additional units arrived, an arrest team contacted Perkins on the porch and saw a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver next to him. The rescue team entered the house and removed the wife, who sustained a gunshot wound, from suspect Perkins. Her son was also inside and uninjured. The wife was transported to California Hospital and fortunately survived the injury. Paramedics pronounced Perkins dead at the scene. The investigation revealed that Perkins shot 5 rounds from his handgun. He shot at least 1 round at Officers Ledesma and Lomelli, and 1 round was still in the chamber. Officers Ledesma and Lomelli saved the life of the victim while placing themselves in harm's way. The officers' ability to take appropriate action under stressful conditions is a testimony to their training, their experience, and ability to employ tactical decision-making under dire conditions. Officer Ledesma and Lomelli's courage, discipline, tactical skill teamwork, and ability to function under stressful, chaotic, and perilous conditions embody the finest traditions of the department. The courageous actions of Officer Ramon Lamelli and Rodolfo Ledesma reflect the highest standards of the Los Angeles Police Department. Their bravery, decisiveness, and life-saving actions are worthy of the department's highest award for valor.
Thank you, Chief Peters. Do we have a comment on this, Mr.
We have
Herman?
Mr. Herman.
Well, how do we deal with persons with mental health? Well, we definitely know how to do it with LAPD. Shoot them down. Ask questions later, deal with the problem afterwards. But I want to thank the officers for taking the best choice in this matter. First of all, there was another life involved in a home. Second of all, the response was, it was domestic violence. We all know what domestic violence is. Some of our officers experience that at home. But the issue here is September 2015 regarding serial number 39226 and that of the other Medal of Valor, Officer 37792. It's very important to know that it takes a lot of guts to draw your gun and gun down a person who's violent, suffering from post-traumatic stress, dealing with bipolar issues. We're familiar with that, Sobra. And most of all, let us always recognize our rank and file, our officers who put their life at risk to protect those of us in the public. It is a great magnitude of honor that I give them, because I know for a fact, growing up in Boyle Heights, what it's like to see people gunned down. I know what it's like to live in other cities and watch homeless people get beaten down and gunned down. But in this particular case, Mr. Perkins got what he deserved, right? No. This is the reason why we have to take the approach with the County Board of Supervisors and deal with the mental health issues very seriously. Very seriously. Thank you, officers. Thank you again.
Again, I want to commend the actions of this officer and enthusiastically approve the department's, move to approve the department's report. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're now on item number 3C, Department's Report dated September 21st, 2017, relative to the recommendation for the Medal of Valor for Bravery to Sergeant Joseph Morrison, serial number 26894 of Pacific Area.
Thank you, Commissioners. It's again my privilege to read this recommendation for valor on behalf of Sergeant Joseph Morrison. It is recommended that the Honorable Board of Police Commissioners award the Medal of Valor to Sergeant Joseph Morrison for his heroic actions on March 19, 2013. On March 19, 2013, at approximately 1836 hours, Pacific Area Patrol officers responded to a radio call of a 459 suspect there now at 3767 South Bentley Avenue. The person reporting indicated that a male suspect was inside his mother's apartment threatening to kill her and was refusing to open the door. Upon arrival at the scene, the responding officers were advised by reporting party that his 56-year-old mother was inside the location with a male neighbor, suspect, who was holding her hostage. The suspect locked and barricaded the doors with furniture and was threatening to set fire to the apartment and kill the woman. Due to the barricaded doors, the officers contacted Sergeant Morrison and requested a battering ram. Meanwhile, the officers could hear the hostage pleading with the suspect to turn off the gas, and within seconds, fire erupted in the front living room. The officers began kicking the door and striking the windows with their batons, but the barricaded doors did not budge, and their batons only poked holes in the windows due to the window tinting film. A garden hose and a fire extinguisher were used in an unsuccessful attempt to extinguish the flames from the outside. When Sergeant Morrison arrived with the battering ram, the living room was fully engulfed in flames. After several strikes with the battering ram, Sergeant Morrison was able to break the front door from the hinges. He was confronted with a large amount of furniture and heavy items blocking the entry, as well as dense, dark smoke emitting from the doorway. He pulled the items from the doorway to clear a path, but the dense smoke prevented their view into the apartment. Sergeant Morrison entered the residence because he was afraid that the hostage would be killed by the suspect armed with a knife or by the fire or potential gas explosion. Partially into the living room, he was overcome by the dense smoke and flames and was forced to retreat due to lack of oxygen. He made several more attempts to enter the living room to rescue the hostage, but was forced to retreat due to the dense smoke, heat, and flames. Ultimately, Sergeant Morrison laid flat on the floor and crawled into the apartment beneath the dense smoke layer. Sergeant Morrison had to feel his way through the living room and kitchen, still unable to see and breathing in more of the toxic smoke. Simultaneously, the suspect was crawling on the floor towards the living room with his hand out in front of him when he encountered Sergeant Morrison. Sergeant Morrison grabbed the suspect's hand to pull him outside. The suspect pulled free and exclaimed, "We are all going to die. I want us to die." Sergeant Morrison had been breathing in the smoke for some time and was on the verge of losing consciousness. However, he grabbed the suspect and told him, "If you want to live, you come with me." Morrison then lifted the suspect from the floor as he continued to struggle. The suspect then attempted to pull Sergeant Morrison into the kitchen where the fire and smoke was thickest. Sergeant Morrison continued to struggle with the suspect and was able to pull him out of the apartment through the front door where both collapsed. Sergeant Morrison lost consciousness due to extreme smoke inhalation. The officers took the suspect into custody and were able to break the window of the rear bedroom and pull the victim to safety. Sergeant Morrison was transported to St. John Medical Center where he was admitted and treated for life-threatening smoke inhalation and singed nasal passages. The suspect was treated for smoke inhalation and then booked for multiple felony charges. Because of his heroism, Sergeant Morrison was recognized by the California Peace Officers Association and awarded the Award of Valor for outstanding acts of daring and bravery. The American Legion recognized him as the Hero of the Year for 2014, and he was commended by the Los Angeles Fire Department for his quick, life-saving actions. The courageous actions of Sergeant Morrison reflect the highest standards of the Los Angeles Police Department. His bravery, decisiveness, and life-saving actions are worthy of the department's highest award for valor.
Thank you very much. Do we have a comment on this
We
item?
have Mr. Herman.
Well, welcome in, Chief Charlie Beck. And we should recognize the valor and the Honorable Sergeant Joseph Morrison, serial number 26894, for his heroism. Who else would go through that daring act of saving someone from burning, especially a parent? None of us want to harm our parent, but apparently this gentleman had some mental health issues or some type of, as Soboroff points out, it's bipolar issues. But see, if we would just help people with mental health, we wouldn't have to have these experiences. And Sergeant Joseph should have gotten a blank check, a thank you check, so he could take a short vacation to de-stress. Because that's what I believe. I believe all our rank and file should receive one blank check a year for all their heroism, whether they sit in their patrol car, whether they're at the Union Station Metro standing there. It's a stressful, dangerous job because at any time, my officers can be injured. The officers that I go to work for and pay taxes to pay them to do an excellent job of heroism, such as the valor and bravery of Mr. Sergeant Joseph Morrison. And we should always recognize officers for when they do something good, we give a shout out. When you do something bad, then I'm here to put down the cadet program. Off topic, but it has an issue involving how to save lives. And once again, thank you, Sergeant. I hope they really give you more than just a medal, because my recommendation is they should give you a small blank check and take a day off or two with your family.
Thank you. Again, I commend the actions of Sergeant Morrison and I move to approve the department's report. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Mr. President, item number 3D, verbal presentation and discussion by the New York University School of Law Policing Project relative to their report to the Los Angeles Police Commission summarizing public feedback on the LAPD video release policies.
Oh, Shane, what time do you have to leave? You know what, actually, I'm sorry, we're gonna take a beat because we're going to lose Commissioner Goldsmith in a moment, so let's go back to item
Number
1.
one. Okay, item number 1 on the agenda is the election of officers for fiscal year 2017,
You can stay
2018.
there. Thank you. Before we take a vote on the leadership of the commission, I want to say a few words about the past 2 years. When Mayor Garcetti asked me to serve, and my colleagues selected me for this chair, I understood the weight of this position and the challenges ahead. We were, and remain, in the middle of a very important and difficult national conversation about policing in America. The heartbreaking stories of young men like Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, and Brandon Glenn right here in Los Angeles forced people everywhere to confront an urgent need for new conversations about reform. Even in Los Angeles, where we had been released from a federal consent decree that came after decades of pain, and where we fought hard and for remarkable change in the policies, practices, and perception of our department, there was still important and vital work to be done so that the extraordinary, if imperfect, progress that we have achieved did not ever go backward. Mayor Garcetti understands that urgency, and the members of this commission reflect his and our total dedication to making Los Angeles a leader in this national conversation.
Mayor Garcetti, where the 22 minutes of Waukesha Wilson's video is now.
Ma'am, you're disrupting the meeting. If you disrupt again, I'm going to ask you to leave. Our commitment is to have that conversation while embracing the humanity of anyone who has borne the pain of a long and often difficult history, to hear their stories, consider their point of view, and make it part of how we think about the future of policing in Los Angeles. To always recognize that we have an incredible police department full of professional, talented, and compassionate officers who have unselfishly dedicated themselves to serving our communities at great risk to their own lives. And to turn our platform into a national model for bringing people together to hear one another, understand each other, and solve challenges together. 25 years after the unrest of 1992, that is exactly what we're doing. Strengthening the department's use of force policies and training, and making sure our officers are equipped with the best, less than lethal tools available so that deadly force is only a last resort to be used in life or death situations. Putting a new focus on de-escalation training to reduce the number of officer-involved shootings. Putting body-worn cameras on all patrol officers and taking a careful, thoughtful look at how and when video is released so we can protect the rights of officers and members of the public while delivering the transparency and accountability that Angelenos expect to be a part of 21st century policing in our city. Taking a critical look at the department's relationship with communities of color, with people who are living on the streets, and with the immigrant community. Holding the first single-issue hearings on biased policing, homelessness, and immigration in the department's history. Mandating implicit bias training for all officers. Expanding our community safety partnerships. Putting officers on the front line of the city's mission to help the unsheltered. And working to strengthen the protections we have in place to preserve the rights of every person in Los Angeles, regardless of immigration status. Commissioners Soboroff, Figueroa Villa, McLean Hill, and Goldsmith, thank you so much for your committed leadership and partnership on these and so many issues. Your passion for serving the community and your support for this department and our officers is creating a strong legacy. What you do is not easy because we know that not everyone agrees with every decision this commission makes on policy or personnel. Sometimes the disagreements are heated. But I think the results of the last 2 years show that the criticism we receive from both sides has forced us to see new perspectives and sharpened our thinking around the work that remains. That is important, and I want to always be a voice for the spirit of civility, respect, and reconciliation that makes meaningful dialogue possible. Being a member of this commission and serving as president these last 2 years is one of the great honors of my life, because what we accomplished doesn't just speak to the future of this department, it says something about the future of our city and the things we believe in. Every life has value, every encounter has meaning, and every one of us, members of this commission, police officers, and all Angelenos, has a responsibility to look out for each other, to be fair and just, to show compassion for one another. As a father, as a citizen, as a commissioner, my goal has never changed, and that is to work with all of my outstanding colleagues on this commission to act with principle and to lead this department such that every Angeleno, black, brown, and white, gay, straight, or transgender, immigrant or native born, doesn't just believe, but knows that the Los Angeles Police Department exists to serve and protect their safety, preserve their rights, and uphold their dignity. And to reassure the courageous men and women who wear the badge that we will do the same for them and take every possible step to give them the resources, training, support, and respect that they earn each and every day. At the end of the day, I believe we all want the same things: safe communities, equality in law enforcement, and a sense that we are working toward these same things together. I'm proud of the work this commission is doing, and I'm confident that we are well positioned to finish the work we've started and to take on new challenges. Although my term as president is over, I look forward to continuing to work with all of my fellow commissioners, and I would like to nominate my predecessor, Steve Soboroff, to serve again as president of this commission. Order, please. I am confident that Commissioner Soboroff will aggressively lead this commission in the vital work we have ahead of us. Do I have a second?
It would be my privilege to second the motion.
Any other nominations? All in favor? You want to say something? Okay. All in favor of Commissioner Soboroff as president?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. I will now turn the meeting over to President Soboroff. Congratulations. Thanks.
Call the public comment cards.
Mr. President, can I comment?
Sure.
I thought I'd get you while you were in transition. On behalf of the men and women of the Los Angeles Police Department, I want to thank former President Johnson for his service with the Los Angeles Police Commission as president. I have been a student and participant of the Police Commission for decades now, and there has never been a tougher time to be the president. And that not necessarily because of the incidents in Los Angeles, but definitely because of the incidents nationally and internationally. And you have served not only with distinction, but with elegance, and you have moved the department forward. And I strongly believe that we would not be in the place that we are now without your leadership. And I want to thank you. I know it's been personally tough, and you know, as somebody that understands these things deeply, I know that the sacrifice for your family and even professionally has been great. And so we want to thank you for that, and we want to recognize what a truly outstanding job that you have done. And I just couldn't be more grateful to have had the opportunity to work with you in the past, and I look forward to the future.
Thank you very much.
Chief. Commissioner Figueroa, may we take a nomination for the Vice President of the Los Angeles Police Commission?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Matt Johnson for Vice President of this Police Commission.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any other nominations? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Yes.
Okay, we do
I
have,
want to thank my colleagues on the commission for your support. Over the years, I've gotten to know each of you as thoughtful, fair, and compassionate people, and I need your continued time and energy in order to continue the progress and the critical issues that Matt Johnson just described. For the sake of every Angelino, and especially the underserved among us. Matt, your service as president has been nothing short of remarkable during a remarkably difficult time. Your legacy as a commissioner was earned based on your leadership skills, your integrity, and your determination to continually do what is right for the people of Los Angeles and the brave men and women of the LAPD. It will be appreciated for years to come. You know, I've learned plenty since my last acceptance speech 4 years ago. And 4 specifics have risen among the dozens. First, the job of being a police officer is far more difficult than any non-cop can imagine. The dozens of split-second variables that simultaneously occur to the men and women who wear these uniforms are never-ending, always changing, and becoming more complex. Second, being underserved is far more difficult than most, especially than the privileged, can imagine. Lack of job opportunities, subpar health and education facilities, living amongst gangs, drugs, and guns, and living homeless with or without mental illness is nothing short of a national crisis. Third, law enforcement best practices change rapidly due to 3 things. Number 1, new technology. Number 2, advancements in training of officers to deal with those with mental health, homeless, or substance abuse problems. And 3, instantaneous communication among law enforcement leaders and scholars from around the world. Chief, you and your command staff lead the finest police department in America. And you have acknowledged that every one of us is still a work in progress, me especially. And fourth, we must recruit boys and girls and men and women away from gangs. And the way to do it is to provide them programs, jobs, positive reinforcement, healthy choices, education, and opportunity. We cannot police our way out of this. We all can and should work together to support our youth, to prepare them for college or entering the workforce. Their success and their self-confidence is our answer. In summary, as president of this commission, my responsibility is now to, number 1, facilitate the crossing of the goal lines of many of the initiatives that Matt, the mayor, the council, through its Public Safety Commission, the League, the LA Police Protective League, my fellow commissioners, cops, and the public have begun. For example, Mayor Garcetti has challenged us to deliver, and Matt has pushed us to make real programs and policies, from new and better training in de-escalation and implicit bias, to strengthening our protections for immigrants and service to the homeless. Over 100 programs, like the Watts Bears, like even shoe giveaways, like the cadets, are always a critical part of community-based policing. Number 2, every member of LAPD will hopefully double down on community and relationship policing, so everyone in Los Angeles can trust that this is their department and they can feel safe, comfortable, and free to engage with the officers who serve their neighborhoods. Every Angelino deserves an ever-evolving LAPD that protects and serves every Angelino. And every Angelino needs to help in some way to make that happen. There is no place in any zip code for illegal guns or drug pushers. And finally, city department systems must work better together and faster together to increase recruitment, especially to continue diversification of this department. More women, more African Americans, more Asian Pacific Islanders should have the opportunity to wear our badge and be represented throughout future org charts. It is a goal of all of us that every child in Los Angeles will grow up seeing and talking to and respecting officers who look just like them. All of us need to push the reset button with those we have disagreed with those we have had sharp words with. Let's start anew. Let's keep in mind the words of Dr. Maya Angelou in her famous poem, The Human Family. We are all more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. So let's all fasten our seatbelts, let's get on the same train, and let's start moving forward. Thank you very much. Were there any public comments?
Yes, sir. We have 4 public comment cards on this item. We have Mr. Herman, Hamid Khan, Prentice Jenkins, and Ariana Alcaraz.
Okay.
So 42 USC 1983. Let's stick to the local laws, the liability, accountability, and I love what the young woman said over here. Transparency. Don't discredit all your errors. You made multiple errors, Mr. Soboroff. You couldn't pay for your dog license. Roof, roof, roof. And you, Matthew, I can't say anything because the folks here say enough about you. I don't care what kind of education you have, or could have, or should have, or would have. There is no angel in LA. Only a creep and a weirdo who comes here like me to show the world that I shouldn't be here. It's all wrong. But why am I here? Because advocacy brings me here to share the news of the good and the bad, the pros and the cons, the lies by Steve Soboroff. For 15 years, couldn't pay for his dog license. City Watch News. And how much more ignorant and arrogance do we must tolerate by the president? I'm surprised he hasn't ushered me out. But there's still a diffusement between I and you regarding the ADA complaint, Mr. Soboroff. And that is, work on it. Stop discriminating against people with disabilities. One and foremost, ADA, Section 504, Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Title II and Title III. Comply with the ADA regulations of discrimination against every person here should have a right to be heard and speak on the transparency of issues they want to say. Fuck Eric Garcetti.
Next speaker, please.
Hamid Khan, please.
I don't know if I should take offense to a rich white man from the west side living in Pacific Palisades.
It's hard to hear you, Mr. You want to adjust the microphone? We'll start your time over again, sir.
I will say it again. I was going to say that I don't know if I should take offense from a rich white man living in Pacific Palisades representing the most impacted people of Los Angeles. But then I think it is also a tradition of this institution as well. Because what we are looking at between these musical chairs that are happening in front of us is a very long tradition of white supremacy and how it maintains its control, how it operates. So the police commission is nothing new in Los Angeles. It's been around since the 1920s. But I think what is also very crucial, as Matt Johnson said, that LAPD becoming a national model, I think we need to reframe that as a national model for disgrace, as a national model for complete shamelessness. Because why is it that you have a civilian oversight commission for 90 years, but you still constantly have outside and independent bodies coming in and investigating this body, right? You had the McCone Commission after Watts. You had the Christopher Commission after Rodney King. You had a consent decree, and the language of the consent decree was if people were not ashamed, I mean, as residents of Los Angeles, we had to feel some shame about it, that we allow these kind of institutions to function. But here we are again, that in this body, regardless of what we do, in 2011, 2012, 2015, 2016, LAPD murdered the most people of any police department in the country, LAPD has formed the largest national security police state of massive architectural surveillance. LAPD is a representative of the stalker state. When it tracks, it monitors, and it kills. So I think regardless of these musical chairs, we know what kind of orchestra is going to be playing, but the only change that is happening in this body is because of people. Because of Black Lives Matter, because of Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, and because of Los Angeles Community Action
Next,
Network,
please.
and because of people, not because of your bullshit.
The next speaker, Prentice Jenkins.
Mr. Jenkins, sir.
Good morning. President Soboroff, Vice President Johnson, Commission. I still have the fight in me that I have for the man who was murdered, Ezell Ford. I'll continue to speak his name in this chamber. I'll continue to fight for his name. He can't, he's dead. And Brendan Glenn. I'll continue to say that I am honored, President Soboroff, that you are the president of the commission now, and that you continue to be the vice president. Mr. Johnson, a wise man once told me only about 1% of all the cops are crazy. 99% aren't. I honor the 99%. You have a friend in me. I go to war with that 1% that kill and maim individuals just because they're suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. I'll continue to go to war with them. I am the founder of Peace Between Residents and Police. I know with you in leadership, President Soboroff, that incidents like the one that happened at Brendan Glenn and incidents that happened to Ezell Ford will diminish under your leadership. And I'm prepared to support this commission and support your leadership. I also want every police officer, all 9,000, because you're in this too, to go to Peace Between Residents and Police and donate $20. It can't hurt you. You know why? Because it's your problem too. It's not just our problem. It's your problem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next,
Ariana Alcaraz.
is this the last of the comments?
sir.
Okay. Good morning.
Hello, my name is Ariana. I'm a member of the Los Angeles Community Action Network here in downtown. I'm also, I coordinate an organic pop-up market in Pueblo de Rio, which is recently where the CSP started their program. I wanted to just say that I think it's, that I am really offended at your comments around the lack of jobs in the community, because now you're coming into our communities and creating these hubs where you're taking all these jobs from people in the neighborhood. For example, in the CSP in Pueblos, you guys are doing English classes, you're teaching kids how to play football, and you're doing computer classes and tutoring, and these are all jobs that can be, that people in the neighborhood would love to do for their community, but instead now we have to strap a gun to our waist if we want to even give back and help the youth in our neighborhoods. So that is what you are creating in our communities, is now police officers are going to be everywhere. They're going to be teaching kids everything, and you're going to put people who work in parks, who work in these after-school programs, you're going to put them out of a job, because that is the ultimate goal of these community safety partnerships. I want to say also on the homelessness crisis, and you talk about policing your way out of and we can't police our way out of homelessness. You're creating the homelessness crisis that we're in. You're making it impossible for people to get out of the situations that they're in because you're hyper-criminalizing them, and you're giving them tickets for the most unnecessary things, for not even crimes, like sleeping on the sidewalk if they are sick, or if they are diabetic and they need to rest. Police officers will roll up and give them a ticket. How dare you talk about not policing our way out of it? The other day, these police officers came and ticketed Lavame, who was providing mobile showers to people on the streets, and your officers came and gave them a ticket. And when a community activist went and supported them, these officers went around the corner and gave him a ticket on his car, knowing exactly what car that he was using. So don't say and sit here and act like you are doing such great work in our communities, because at the end of the day, you're taking up all of our jobs, and you're creating a situation where we're gonna have to strap guns to our waist if we wanna give back to our communities, and that is not the answer.
Thank you for your thoughts.
Mr. President, would you like me to begin with 3B, or?
Commissioner Soboroff?
Yes.
Yes, before we move on, can I just...
Sure, please.
On this item? And I'm sorry I didn't say it at the top of the item. I was just thinking about it. I didn't want today to pass, and this leadership moment to pass, without taking just a point of personal privilege. Just a little over a year ago, when I was first approached about being on the commission, the thing that I knew, other than the sort of political and organizational and role of the police commission, the thing that I was most aware of was the work that was being done here by then President Matt Johnson. And it was the opportunity to work with him that essentially inspired or ultimately motivated me to join the commission. I did want to, as a member of this commission, to take this opportunity to say thank you, and to say to those who, on a pretty regular basis, offer critiques of the way in which we do our work, while it is true that our work is often informed by, and elements of it have been motivated by, community pressure. Without a willing partner, nothing happens. And sitting in this seat,
I think when President Johnson asked you, gave you a final warning about speaking, now I'm going to give you a final warning about speaking. Sir, would you stand up for a sec? Okay, I'm going to give you your final warning about speaking.
Ooh, that's a threat.
You have plenty of opportunity to talk to us in public session. You have plenty of opportunity to do it in a way that everyone can listen. And there will not be disruption of this meeting. Go ahead.
I simply wanted to say that the agenda that he spoke to as his final comment as chair is an agenda that that I have watched him work tirelessly to implement. I am particularly grateful for his work and support of work around implicit bias and implicit bias training for the department, and am looking forward to the continuation of the work that he outlined so eloquently at the top. But really, most importantly, I just wanted to acknowledge the impact and the role of his leadership over the last 2 years, and certainly over the last year that I've been on the commission, and to say thank you for that.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? We'll move on. Okay, thanks. We're on item D?
Item D, sir.
Okay. Item D is an initiative of then President Johnson, Commissioner Johnson, and Commissioner Goldsmith, and I would like them to lead this discussion on this item now. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. Did you announce the agenda item?
Announced it. I can announce it again. Verbal presentation and discussion by the New York University School of Law Policing Project relative to their report to the Los Angeles Police Commission summarizing public feedback on the LAPD video release policies.
Good morning. So we have Maria Ponomarenko from the NYU Policing Project with us, who will present the results of the public feedback on the LAPD video release policies. I want to thank the Policing Project from NYU for the work that they did on this, Barry Friedman, who leads the project, and Maria, obviously, who ran this particular project here in Los Angeles. We had partners. UCLA and UCLA Law School also helped with the project, but it was really NYU that led it and took the lead in writing the report. There were 27 local, and maybe I will leave that for you to describe. I do want to thank everyone that participated, the public, the department. There were a lot of people that facilitated getting as much feedback as possible. And as we begin to start drafting a policy, this information is critical for us to have so we can really understand the full breadth of different perspectives on this issue. Ms. Ponomarenko, I turn it over to you, and thank you.
Commissioner Goldsmith, do you want to give a little?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson, and good morning, everyone. So my name is Maria Ponomarenko, and I'm the Deputy Director at the Policing Project at NYU Law. As Commissioner Johnson indicated, last fall, the Commission asked the Policing Project to help gather public input on the LAPD's policy for releasing video after there's been an officer-involved shooting or other critical incident. Today, I'm here to present a report describing the feedback we received, and that's the report that you now have in front of you today. I want to begin by saying a few words about the Policing Project. I'll then describe the public comment process that we helped facilitate here in Los Angeles, and then turn finally to what we learned. So the Policing Project at NYU works with police departments and with communities across the country to help bring the public's voice to policing. And Commissioners, there should be a handout with the slides, and I don't know if you're able to also see them on the screen. Yeah, you have the handout. Perfect. Great. So we believe at the Policing Project that policing can be both safer and more effective and more legitimate if community members are given a say in how their communities are policed. In addition to the work that we did in Los Angeles, we have helped the NYPD and the Camden County Police Departments gather public input on their body-worn camera policies. In Cleveland, we're working with the Federal Monitor to gather public input around the issues in the consent decree, including use of force and community policing. And in Chicago, we're currently assisting a coalition of grassroots activists to draft an ordinance for a commission very much of the sort here in Los Angeles. In doing our work in Los Angeles, we were helped tremendously by our academic partners at UCLA and UC Irvine Law Schools, who both helped design the community input process and assisted with on-the-ground efforts. So the feedback process that is at issue in the report ran for 46 days from March 23rd to May 7th. If you're wondering why it was 46 days, it's because I can't read a calendar, and we had intended to do it for 45. Now, during this period, we asked for feedback in 4 ways. We created an online questionnaire which walked respondents through the key policy issues and asked for their input. The questionnaire included both multiple choice questions as well as space for people to explain their answers so that we understood not only what people thought, but also why. We also created an online comment portal where individuals and organizations were invited to submit written comments with more detail on what the LAPD's policy should be. We held 5 community forums in different parts of the city, and in order to hear from officers and members of the LAPD command staff, we also held 8 focus groups at the department. In order to help inform public input, we developed a variety of educational materials, including a brief video that walked people through the trade-offs, as well as a policy fact sheet. In order to ensure broad-based input, we conducted extensive outreach in order to ensure we heard from as many people as possible. We made use of both traditional and social media. Articles and editorials about this process appeared in the LA Times, the Sentinel, the LA Weekly, the Daily News, among others. We also reached out directly, often by phone or by email, to elected officials, as well as over 200 community-based organizations, neighborhood councils, and other local groups. We worked very closely with all of LAPD's 22 area captains who helped get the word out through the community networks that they're in touch with. And we also worked with both the mayor's office and the LAPD to get flyers up in areas where the forums were held. At the end of the day, we received 3,200 questionnaires from people who live, work, or go to school in Los Angeles. Now, we asked people, because we wanted to make sure we heard from both officers and members of the public, we asked people whether they were currently in law enforcement or had friends or family who were. As you can see, 17% of respondents on the questionnaire were either current or former law enforcement officers. 31% indicated that they were members of the public with a friend or a family member in law enforcement, and 52% of respondents had no close ties to law enforcement. When we looked at the responses, we found that there were stark differences between the views of the public and the views of the officers who responded, which we indicate throughout our report. Interestingly enough, there were very few differences on the key policy questions between people who said they had close ties to law enforcement and those who did not. Now, in terms of demographics, and here you can see the blue is the survey and the orange is the actual LA population, Hispanic or Latino respondents were significantly underrepresented in the questionnaire results, whereas both white and black respondents were overrepresented compared to their populations. That said, when we compared responses along demographic lines, we found very few differences among respondents, and where we did find differences, we noted those in the report. Now, in addition to the questionnaires that we received comments from 27 organizations, both national and local, including the ACLU of Southern California, the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, the National Action Network, the LA Times, and other media groups. These organizations, of course, also represent the views of thousands of people. We also received a petition from the ACLU, which had over 1,700 signatures. And finally, we heard from 60 officers and members of the command staff who participated in focus groups. In short, we received a great deal of input in writing our report. Now, before turning to the results themselves, I want to make one more point about this process and about the questionnaire. We wanted to make sure that in answering the questions, members of the public were aware of the trade-offs involved in making the decision of whether video should be made public. Although there's been a lot of discussion about releasing video in the press, that discussion does not always reflect fully the set of trade-offs involved. In order to address this, we prepared a variety of educational materials that described in broad terms the arguments both for and against releasing video. We noted, for example, that releasing video can help demonstrate the department's commitment to transparency and accountability, and that this can help build community trust in the police. We also pointed to various concerns with releasing video, including the effect that doing so may have on a police investigation, and also on the privacy interests of those involved. We then began the questionnaire itself by once again walking respondents through a variety of circumstances that could weigh either for or against release in any given case. For example, the family of the individual who was injured or killed may want the video to be made public, or there may be cases when the family actually objects to release. If there are protests after a shooting, releasing video can help quell public unrest, and it also can help correct public misperceptions about what occurred. On the other hand, video often may capture only a part of the incident and thus lead to greater confusion. And there may, of course, be concerns with juror bias if a case is ever brought to trial. In the questionnaire, we walked respondents through each of these questions and asked them to say how important these factors should be in deciding whether video should be made public. And as we expected, members of the public generally and officers agreed that many, if not most of these factors are in fact very important to consider. The comments that we received from organizations also indicated that people understood the trade-offs involved. With that background in mind, brings me to the results themselves. Now, the report that you have in front of you is 28 pages long, and there is quite a bit of nuance in it. But as it turns out, my report today can be remarkably simple because despite all of that nuance, the bottom line here is actually quite clear. So first, everyone, including both officers and members of the public, agreed that video should be released at some point. 88% of the public said video definitely or probably should be made public, and 63% of officers said the same. All of the organizations that submitted written comments on this point also agreed that video should be made public at some point. Where views diverged was on the question of when video should be released. Members of the public generally said that release should happen quite quickly. 65% of public respondents said that video should be released within 60 days, and in fact, nearly half of respondents said that it should happen in 30 days or less. In additional comments, people clarified that they in fact preferred video should be released much quicker than that. Most of the organizations that submitted written comments also argued for prompt release. The ACLU of Southern California, Bend the Arc, and the Beverly Hills Bar Association all said that it should happen with 30 days, as did the ACLU petition that again received 1,700 signatures. Officers, on the other hand, preferred a much longer time frame for release. 64% of officers said that the release should not happen until the DA has made a charging decision, which in Los Angeles can take 2 or more years. Now, besides the question of when to release video, the other big question is how. And here there are essentially 2 options. One is a case-by-case process in which someone, be it the commission or the chief of police, decides in any given case whether video should be made public and when. The other option is for video to be released automatically within a certain time period. A majority of questionnaire respondents, as well as several organizations in written comments, were of the view that video should be released automatically after a certain time period. The questionnaire responses offered quite a bit of insight as to why. It appears that the most important obstacle to case-by-case release is the fact that members of the public had little trust in any given public official to make the decision correctly on a case-by-case basis. We asked people whether they would trust the chief, the DA, the commission, or the mayor to make that decision. As you can see from the chart, no official enjoyed more than a great deal of support from more than 16% of the public, and no official enjoyed even a fair amount of trust from a majority of respondents. Ironically, people had the most trust in the DA, but virtually no one among the public actually agreed with the DA's view that video should not be released until a charging decision is made. It seems that the driving concern for automatic release was that if the decision is made on a case-by-case basis, it inevitably will become politicized. Indeed, although officers favored a much longer time frame and preferred to wait until the DA made a charging decision, they also expressed concerns with case-by-case determinations. One of the participants in an officer focus group captured it best, saying that even if God Almighty were on the panel, he will become corrupted, which is to say that people would become suspicious of his views. Finally, in closing, I just want to come back one more time to the factors cutting for or against release. If the decision to release video is made on a case-by-case basis, the commission also would need to decide what set of factors that decision would be based on. As I said earlier, people generally agreed that many of these factors are important to consider. But respondents on the questionnaire and in written comments from organizations also expressed concern that many of these factors could potentially be used to justify withholding video in almost any case. For example, people generally agreed that juror bias is in fact a concern, but as I've said, virtually no one was willing to wait the 2 or more years that it takes the DA in LA County to decide whether charges will be filed. Indeed, in focus groups, many of the officers and members of the command staff agreed that 2 years was too long a time to wait. In sum, members of the public generally were of the view that video should be made public, that this should happen quickly, and that release should be automatic. Officers agreed that video should be released to the public at some point, but preferred to wait until after the DA decides whether charges will be filed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
Process, what happens next?
So the process The next step in the process is we'll be taking this feedback, along with additional feedback that we've gotten, taking into consideration state law and other factors, and the subcommittee of Shane and myself, along working with the department and the IG's office, will craft.
League as well?
Well, we've already gotten input
Okay.
from that's what this was.
Got it.
We'll craft a draft policy. Once this subcommittee, which is Shane and myself, are comfortable with it, which we expect to be 3 weeks from today, that draft policy will come before the entire commission for review and comment, and also public comment. There will not be a vote on that policy at that meeting. That will be a time for feedback on that policy. We will get that additional feedback. If changes, revisions need to be made, they will be made, and it will come back 2 weeks after that for a vote.
So to be clear, because of Brown Act, this will be handled by 2 commissioners, which is fine under the Brown Act. The other 3 commissioners will not have seen the draft. Commissioners McLean Hill, Sandy, and myself will not have seen it until it's presented
That's right.
to the public.
That's not necessarily the case. The Brown Act means we can't discuss it. It doesn't mean we can't ask for a briefing or see it.
We can't what?
We can't discuss it among ourselves, but it doesn't mean that we can't ask for an independent briefing or see it.
Can it be circulated to the commissioners prior to it being on the agenda?
We can't be briefed on it or see it or talk about it, I mean, with staff?
That's the whole reason why it would have to come back to open session
Use
for
your,
discussion.
I don't think your mic's on, Carla. Oh, it is.
I have a couple of questions, actually, and that is, I noted in the report that there was a reference to a number of organizations, but there are no copies of the letters. Is it possible, I mean, where would those be, and how would we actually see the raw data from which you prepared the report?
So I'm happy to pass that along, I guess, to Mr. Tiefenk, who can circulate it to the commission.
Question is simply, is the report itself being posted, or, I mean, we got it today. I assume it's being posted and available to the public?
Yes, ma'am. It'll be posted today on our website. I believe it's going to be on their website also, and we have copies of it in the back of the room.
Okay, and just to be clear, I can't see the draft of the item. I assume, though, that I can see anything other than the draft?
You can get all the source documents.
Okay.
You can't see the draft policy.
Okay, thanks.
So the draft will be included in the materials for the board, so you will have it, several days before the meeting.
And the intent of the subcommittee is that the public and other stakeholders who may or may not have participated will still have opportunity for input in the public setting here. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Chief?
Carlos, I know that there is a timeline upon which the material must be posted prior to the commission meeting. Is there anything that prohibits it being posted a little sooner so that the commissioners could have access to it longer?
Well, it would be posted, the report or the draft would be posted when the commissioners are provided with copies.
Right, which is generally the...
Right.
When the agenda comes out.
But that's...
Can we post it?
Do it before the agenda.
That would be an internal decision as to whether or not it's available sooner.
But you could...
We could do that.
I think you can do it
Okay,
sooner.
good. That's a
Yes.
good point.
And then you could all have it longer.
Good point. Thank you, Chief.
Thursday's tough.
We'll do that. I mean, look, that's to everyone's benefit. We want everybody to have as much time to review it and be thoughtful about it. Public as well, exactly. So when it is ready, we will circulate it and post it for the full commission, the department, and members of the public as well.
Good. So we won't hold it for the agenda, is your point?
Right.
Yeah.
I think you do it, you can have meetings in...
If I may, what I would recommend we would do is that as soon as we have the document, we can post it a week ahead of time for the agenda, And that way it's plenty of time out there. So when we have the document, we might make that a single-purpose meeting if the president decides to do that, and that way we can get it out early, and that would be the only item on the agenda, and have it out a week ahead of time, something like that. So we'll get the logistics done to get it out in plenty of time.
I think a single-purpose meeting for this would be appropriate. Okay.
We have 8 comment cards.
Okay.
The first 4, Paula Miner, Mr. Herman, Tiffany Guerra, and Hamid Khan.
Morning.
Good morning. As we listen to the report from NYU...
Will you do me a favor and speak right into the microphone? We'll start your time over again. Thank you.
I can't.
Sorry.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, as we listen to this report from NYU, we do have to note that the city of LA has a population of 4 million, and what was received was 3,200 questionnaires. I think we have to just remember that as we move forward. But as we listen to this report, we know that LAPD operates under a cloak of darkness that does not include transparency and accountability when it comes to officer-involved shootings. While millions will be spent and numerous officers will be equipped with cameras, the result of footage obtained must be used to clarify and enlighten incidents, and not to shield and protect officers involved, as has been occurring in the decades before this policy. The city of LA, because of this lack of transparency, lack of concern for the community's right to know, has allowed the actions and killings of LAPD to become LA's dirty secret, while pretending to be a model police force. LAPD has killed more people in the last 3 years than any other police force in the nation, and you all are very much aware of that. A significant number of those killed were unarmed, minimally threatening, homeless, mentally challenged, and excessively people of color, with the murders of black people occurring disproportionately to the number and the population of blacks in LA. As this national conversation in the last few days turns to talk about racial injustice, especially with respect to police shootings of black citizens, LA pretends this discussion does not include them. This fact is so wrong, and this commission has, by rubber stamping and by approval, applauded LAPD's deadly actions and policies. We hope this is the beginning of change. So I stand here to remind us again, black lives,
Speaker,
they matter here.
Next speaker, please.
Mr. Herman is not present. Tiffany Guerra, Hamid Khan.
So one thing it's important to note about why the Board of Police Commissioners and the mayor is so interested in investing in body cameras, besides capitalism and making a deal with Taser for cameras upgrades and 4,400 tasers along with the body cameras, is because of something that Steve Sobroff made very clear when first becoming president several years ago. And that was, when you're talking about video cameras then and how important it was and how this was such an important initiative, the reason you spoke on why it was so important, Steve Sobroff, is because of reducing lawsuits for the city. And I read the article through several times because I was so amazed that you didn't bring up once in your speech any mention of accountability or concern for citizens or anything other than reducing time spent on complaints and lawsuits. That was your big thing, and that just amazed me, although I don't know why I would be surprised about that. I guess it was just your lack of awareness that you shouldn't also try to at least pretend it was for something else. But I guess what I'm saying is that we understand why this is important to you and to the board and to the mayor, and it's not to do with the accountability of officers or making sure the public is protected or making sure, looking into if things are actually going on that the public is saying. It's not about any of those things. It's about reducing lawsuits, and it's about making these deals. So body cameras are not going to be impartial. They are not impartial tools of accountability serving the public. Instead, they are tools used by cops, and they can be turned on or off if they decide, or if they decide to have a camera lens obscured or a microphone turned off. I'm glad you're paying attention to this, Steve. And we have seen what happens even when there is video footage. Philando Castile, Tamir Rice, Terrence Crusher, who was described in the helicopter above as being a bad dude.
Thanks for your opinions.
We have
Next-
seen how
next,
video
speaker,
cameras
please.
can capture police killing someone and it will still be justified. Body cameras are not for the
Next
benefit of the
speaker.
public. Instead, they are tools
Next
that will be
speaker,
used
Hamid
against
Khan,
the public.
please.
Mr. Khan?
So we need to, anytime there's a new policy being discussed or a tool of oppression and control is being introduced, it's really critical to dig much deeper. And there's 4 areas that I want to just make comment on. One is policing project itself and the NYU policing project. I mean, we're amazed at how this whole tradition of outsourcing is now being developed, particularly to an agency that we don't know what their mandate is and what their vested interests are. We can only tell by looking at who's funding them and what are the projects are they involved in. Obviously, the Arnold Foundation, which is driven by some venture capitalists, is one of the big funders for this project, and how they are pushing this risk assessment tool, which is going to create more misery in people's lives. So it's really the idea whether we can give any credit to this report goes to the source to start off with. Then we have to look at the tool itself, because when we talk about video release, it's not about what video, it's about what footage is able to and capable to capture. Because Axon, which has changed its name from Taser, is now claiming itself that with real-time facial recognition, with biometrics, and now including artificial intelligence, the body camera becomes a full-time 24/7 tool of surveillance and information gathering. So it's not only about the 47 people shot in a year or 46 people shot. It's a 24/7 monitoring and tracing and capturing of people's lives that becomes really critical. And Beck is on record by saying that all background footage can be used for evidence as well. So everybody becomes a moving target when it comes to body cameras. That really becomes critical. The third one my colleague Tiffany Guerra already talked about is about liability, because the interest was not about transparency, it was about reducing liability. And lastly, I just wanted to say that some of us attended all of those 5 meetings, and when the community really knew what the real details were, their mood shifted. It wasn't just about this very narrow scope of releasing the video after the fact. It was about what does body camera really mean in their lives. So we continue to reject the use of body cameras under all circumstances.
Thank you for your comments.
The next speaker, Jamie Garcia, followed by Prentice Jenkins. Jamie Garcia.
So I attended some of these, or this body camera forum, and basically did the same thing that Hamid was saying, spoke to people about body cameras, spoke to them about what they're going to be used for, and people's minds shifted. And so that just makes it very apparent how at this police commission we don't really talk about how policing operates. And that's been very apparent in even my discussions with commissioners, which I've mentioned before. So we know with digital in-car video systems that those systems that were meant for transparency, were meant to protect the public from police, that antennas were actually broken off. And we have emails saying, how stupid were we to actually let that happen? We know that through a study with Temple University that actually police shootings are increasing with the use of body cameras. And then again, the massive amount of money that's being poured into LAPD now, once again, to make LAPD accountable. So we're talking in the millions, and this is going to keep going on. This is going to come out of taxpayers' monies to maintain the body cameras, to pay the staff that are going to be looking through video footage. But again, I wanted to kind of talk about data collection, data storing, and data analysis, and look at body cameras in the larger architecture of surveillance. And I wanted to give an example of how this data data collection, which is essentially what body cameras will be doing, what it's going to add to. And this comes out of a study by Sarah Brain, who actually was embedded with LAPD. And so we got to think about, where's all this data going? Well, it's going somewhere, right? So there's this new program, Enterprise Master Person Index in LA County, LAMP, would create a single view of a client across all government systems and agencies, all of an individual's interaction with law enforcement, social services, health service, mental health services, child and family services, would be merged into one unique ID. This is where we are going with this kind of information, with this kind of data collection, that we're actually creating profiles on people. And it's not profiles on people to say, oh, how can I help them? But it's profiles on people to manage to figure out what their threat level is. So you are all responsible for that. You are responsible for this amount of data collection that is happening. And if you don't understand this, and you don't even know about this article, and you don't know about these systems that are being created, you're at fault for what's going to happen to all of us.
Prentice Jenkins, followed by Wayne from Encino, and Pastor Q, John Marie.
Prentice Jenkins, founder of Peace Between Residents and Police. I have a video of what I believe is important.
Change policing as we know it. Body cameras capturing every moment through the eyes of an officer. Police say the cameras could repair public trust, but there's still debate over how they'll be used. NBC 4's Carter Nolan live for us in downtown LA, where civil rights activists and the police see things differently. Govin.
That's right. We just learned that the first rollout of these body cameras will take place on Monday at Mission Station in the San Fernando Valley. Then officers at Newton and at Central Division will be trained and equipped with them. Apparently, sometime in September. This is the first part of the rollout. That's the hardware. But the other issue, as you pointed out, is who will see the video captured by those cameras. Neighborhood activist Prentice Jenkins says he has long believed in the benefits of the new police technology, but not if it remains secret.
It's impossible for you to be transparent if you're not going to allow the public to see it. Well, the LAPD...
That's it, folks. It's impossible for it to be transparent if you're not going to let us see it. We keep talking about transparency, but if the public doesn't see it, where's the transparency? Remember, as an activist, I'm the only one here that continues to talk about peace between residents and police. I'm the founder of Peace Between Residents and Police. And I'm the only one that continues to talk about peace. There's one wants war on one side, one wants transparency, but not allowing us to see the videotape. It's important that we come to some type of compromise. The board has to come to a compromise, and the activists have to come to a compromise. Remember, go to the website, Peace Between Residents and Police, donate $20. Yeah, I'm the only one talking about peace, folks.
Thank you, sir.
Pastor Q, Jen Marie. Followed by Breon Hawley.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
This is more than just about body cameras. There's an emotional and psychological effect on our communities. Philando Castile, Terrence Crutcher, Sandra Bland, Eric Garner, Freddie Gray, Waukesha Wilson, 12-year-old Tamar Rice, John Crawford buying a toy gun in a Walmart, James Boyd, Jerome Reed, Walter Scott, should I go on? Yes. All caught on body cameras, all of them, every last one. And not body cameras, public cameras. The issue we have with body camera, and we still, none of those, by the way, we got any convictions for. So the issue we're dealing with with law enforcement is not about body cameras. It's about the same issue as we're dealing with the national anthem. It's about racism, right? That's what it's about. It's about bias. Increase in transparency for who? The body camera is pointed at the public, not at the police. How can we have transparency when we do have transparency, we don't get convictions? So are we supposed to be Are we supposed to have confidence in this system? When a 12-year-old boy is shot in a park, it's caught on body cameras, the police pulled up 2 seconds and shot him? And you're telling me the issue is body cameras? I don't think so.
Breon Hawley, followed by Leonard Delpit.
Morning.
Good morning. Hello, my name is Breon Hawley. I'm the youth representative for Empowerment Congress Central Area Neighborhood Development Council, representing District 8 under Marquise Harris Dawson. And as a millennial and as a public official, I'm pretty sure I can speak on behalf of all millennials and young individuals who are here. Many of our community stakeholders have a lot of issues with the body cams and how policing are using those, and as far as what can they do to protect themselves. Many individuals my age, I'm 22 years old, and they feel that there's not a responsibility that is being put forth on the body cams as far as how are they used and what can they be, how can they be used against residents who feel that their constitutional rights are being violated. And this is a huge problem, especially for kids my age, because they fear that, and you know, today in the technology age, what we do is we pull out our cell phones and we record, but a lot of them they have a fear of being or feeling as if that if we record, then we are somehow in violation. A lot of kids my age feel like there's really nothing that they can do legally to protect themselves. We have a lot of programs that, and we've been working with a lot of nonprofits who teach legal ways of how to deal with the police and how to record the police if you're going to use a cell phone or any other device to record. And a lot of community members, stakeholders, as well as millennials just have that fear because they have their own personal issues with the police that they have dealt with, a lot of unjustified arrests. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Morning.
Good morning. My name is Leonard Delpit. I'm also a board representative to the Neighborhood Council in Council District A. Our councilman is Marquise Harris Dawson. And I'm here today just to make a few public comments. I see that the denominator is actually the same. Everyone wants a quick or a release of a video. We have two sides here. One side, the police officers, they want to release the video in a certain amount of time. I was looking at this sheet. 64% want to wait after the DA and the commission review. But the public wants the police video to be released within 60 days. So what I think should be happening here, we should sort of compromise and come to an agreement so that way it'll be fair and transparent to everyone that's here. And I noticed that 30 days, 13% of police officers want the video to be released, and 60 days, 4%. So if we can work with the 4% and the 13% of police officers and work with the 60%, the 60 days with the public, then I think we can solve the problem. We don't have to have a lot of hearings about releasing a video. I think that would be fair to the community. I'm from South Los Angeles. You know, I know how it is in police work. You know, I understand police officers, but I also understand the community. And my suggestion to the board is maybe we should meet in the middle and sort of the public wants 60 days to be released. The police officers, 64%, want to wait to the DA, the district attorney, and also the commission. So if we can just narrow it down to meeting in the middle with the 13 and the 4% of police officers and the rest of the community, the public, we would have a better outcome within the board, the DA, police officers, and the
Thank you for your thoughts, sir.
The next speaker, Gina DiPietro, followed by Peter Biebring.
Good morning, Commission, and good morning, police officers. And I would like to thank all of you police officers for standing so bravely around this room in your Kevlar vest, putting your lives at risk. I ask the funniest question when I go into a room like this, and I go, I wonder how many of these police officers have bruises on their bodies, on their knees.
Stay on topic, okay, please.
I am on topic. I'm talking about these police officers who risk their lives, and their body weight should carry more weight in terms of these surveys. Who is NYU to tell the LAPD what to do? What does NYU know? They don't know anything about taking down bad guys. They don't know anything about risking their lives. I don't know what happened to the LAPD Commission. I don't know where you guys are in terms of protecting your officers. I hope you guys are seeing eye to eye. It doesn't seem that way to me. God bless you guys. I hope that your beliefs are being heard. And by the way, that part where
Ask you to stop.
that part in the report where it said that even God would be corrupted, no point has ever been more off point ever in the history of the universe. It's so clear they don't understand law enforcement. Law enforcement believes in God. We need the Holy Spirit to protect us. We don't need people like NYU to say that even God could be corrupted. What do they know? God bless the LAPD. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the final speaker, Peter Biebring.
Is this the last speaker on this topic? Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Peter Biebring for the ACLU of Southern California. I did want to thank the department and the commission for engaging in this outreach and reopening this question of the body camera policy, something that the ACLU, other community groups, and other activists have been calling for some time. I don't think anybody thinks that the body camera release policy is going to be a complete answer to justice, to accountability, to building trust between the department and communities, but it's an important part of the equation. And we look forward to seeing the department's proposed policies. Again, the ACLU did propose a prompt and automatic release unless there are specific reasons that an investigation cannot be completed within a short amount of time, 30 days. Chicago Police Department releases body camera footage within 60 days. It is possible to do. I would, however...
How do you define prompt?
We defined it as within 30 days. I would urge the Commission and the Department to go further, though. I think some of the other public comments already have raised concerns about the surveillance possibilities of video, of body camera video, which is very real. Axon is accumulating talent and companies with video analytics, artificial intelligence, facial recognition. If the department is not currently using those technologies, there is no reason they cannot clearly say so and ban use of those technologies in a policy and address the issue of officer review. Departments vary in this practice, but there are plenty of departments in California and elsewhere that do not allow the officers to review footage before making at least an initial statement in order to get the officer's firsthand impression and preserve that evidence. Thank you.
We have no other comment cards on this item. We're now on item number 3E.
Hold on for a sec.
There's no action required.
Okay. So any comment, final comment on this before we move on? We've talked about the procedure. What's next?
Yeah, no, nothing to add. Thank you for all the diligent work on this and the feedback, including the 27 written, the 27 organization that gave written feedback. All of that will certainly be considered as we draft the policy.
If I could just say that 3,200 respondents on a survey is certainly statistically significant. And I want to commend the outreach, the policing project, and certainly Commissioner Johnson's approach to beginning this policy initiative. There's a lot of work to be done, but this was a really, really, really important first step toward coming to some consensus around how we move forward.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item number E. I think the presentation by Josh Rubenstein and Arif.
Department's report dated September 20th, 2017, relative to the response to the Office of the Inspector General's review of national best practices.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
So we were reporting back to the Police Commission about a series of broad recommendations that came from the Inspector General's office earlier this year. These stem from a couple of documents that highlighted the best practices in policing. And of course, those documents were the final report of the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing and the Police Executive Research Forum's guiding principles on the use of force. These documents were designed to improve police departments and enhance the national conversation on policing, race, and the use of force. And I'm happy to report that most every request that was made by the Office of the Inspector General in its report has been addressed in a matrix that I think has been provided to everybody. We worked very closely with the Inspector General's office on all of these recommendations. So a core value of this department is quality through continuous improvement, and I believe the implementations of these suggestions are a testament to that value. From the incorporation of procedural justice in nearly every aspect of our training to new recruits, to department-wide implicit bias training, and to the new data fields that have been added to our website to increase transparency. We've been working closely with the Inspector General to embrace these new methods for building public trust, creating healthy communities, and ultimately bolstering our accountability to the community. We have representatives from the Office of Operations, Office of Administrative Services, and Office of Constitutional Policing and Policy here to answer any questions you may have about the matrix that was provided. So,
okay.
Give it to you.
Again, the subcommittee was Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Goldsmith. And I wondered, from a question perspective, I read the report carefully. I think it's a very thorough report. I'm interested in your response to the status, the current status based on the recommendations. Go ahead.
Well, I think we can open this up to all the commissioners, but right. I just want to note that I want to remind everyone that the original Inspector General's report came out on May 2nd, 2017. It is really an excellent report, and I encourage members of the public who haven't looked at it to go back and review it. It's available on the website. And then from a 40,000-foot perspective, I have spoken to the Office of the Inspector General, and they have commended the department on the overall responsiveness to those recommendations. I note that a lot of the issues raised in that report we're still in progress on. But I would actually just open it up to the other commissioners first, and then I'm happy to fill in later.
I did have a specific question about the report. I read it thoroughly, although forgot that we weren't going to have monitors here, so I don't have one in front of me. I was particularly interested, though, in one of the recommendations. That would be great. Thanks. Yeah. One of the recommendations related to training. There seemed to be in the matrix a note regarding a apparent, difficulty addressing that particular recommendation, and that seemed to relate to a number of items, including ongoing issues around staffing and operations versus training. And I'm sort of interested in some additional discussion around that point, and I'll see if I can find it, but I think you probably know what I'm talking about, Chief Villegas, so if you could help me out, that would be great.
Yes, George Villegas from the Office of Administrative Services. We also have representatives from Police Science Training Bureau as well, who can address the details of some of the other recommendations that you're asking about. We're still in the process of going through something that's not incorporated in this report, but that was asked of us in the previous report. It's something that we think is appropriate for us as it relates to deployment of personnel. We're in a meet and confer with the Los Angeles Police Protective League in that meet and confer process. So while we're in that process of identifying how we're going to enhance patrol operations with personnel, we're still in the process of identifying how it is that we're going to staff the different positions, not only in training division, but in all the other offices that we have as well.
I would simply note that among the most important things that we do as a department is train. I mean, it has a through line from to every single other outcome that we have, and so it was an important recommendation, one that I know the Inspector General's office was very committed to, and I will be interested in continual reports on how we go about addressing concerns as it relates to standardizing and creating a more reliable and professional training cadre across the board. So thank you.
I'm particularly interested and want to raise the level of awareness to the work that is happening with the MEU unit with, in response to item number E2, which is exploring ways to educate families of persons with mental health conditions on communicating with the call takers and the police, including the development of trainings. It looks like there's been substantial outreach and presentations made, and I'd like basically that stock presentation to be made here at Commission and get on our schedule one time.
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely make that happen. That's an important initiative for us, and we're actually going to be giving MEU its own portion of the lapdonline.org that has all of the information that they've been distributing at some of these trainings and in their MHED training, and some video supporting the work that they do. So we can actually make that happen. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a date by any chance or a target for the survey instrument that the department plans to work with the OIG and labor representatives on?
We've secured the funds for it, but we don't have a date yet for it. But
quarter?
First quarter? Yeah. We'll have to talk to Chief Malinowski about that, but we can report back to you and get that to you as soon as possible.
We have 6 comment cards. We have Mr.
Well, I have a number.
Go ahead.
I have a number of comments. So I'll just go through this as they come up on the agenda. So item A3, which deals with the PSL program, as has come up a number of times, and this is consistent with Commissioner McLean-Hill's comment. The PSL program, I think, is one of the best programs that we have. And I know the PSL2 program is moving forward, and ultimately we'll have the PSL3 program as well. I'm concerned about the issue of not having a full-time cadre. With Chief Peters, you and I have discussed this, and Chief Villegas, we've discussed this as well. What is the issue with respect to recruiting a full-time cadre? I'm specifically concerned, as we've discussed, I've been to that training. I think it's quite excellent, but I want to make sure that we're delivering a consistent product. And if we don't have a full-time cadre, I'm concerned that each class is not necessarily getting the same experience.
John Peters, Deputy Chief John Peters, Police Sciences and Training Bureau. So currently, Commissioner, we are handling the PSL1 with the folks that have been involved from the beginning. Some of the recent improvements is we were able to secure an upgraded position for a Sergeant 1 that's now a Sergeant 2 position, and so we were able to hold interviews and select that individual as the officer involved for that. We also have 2 full-time people that were working at training in another capacity and still doing that as well, but they are able to split their time and do this. We also have the couple of adjunct instructors and also a reserve officer that are consistently involved in this program, and those are the only ones teaching it currently. And so I think right now the consistency is what in fact you saw when you conducted the audit.
So right now, it's being instructed by adjuncts and reserve officers?
Yes, those are people. There's the sergeant that's assigned there. There's a sergeant that's been involved from the beginning that actually works out of my office, so he's a part of the training umbrella. There's two people that have been assigned to training division that are also involved in that, and a reserve officer from the department are dealing with the with PSL 1. My bigger concern is moving forward now that we are moving on in time and we're due for PSL to start. I think Chief Villegas mentioned some of the deployment issues that the department is looking at all around. The train division is down a significant number of instructors, just overall instructors, and so in trying to fulfill the other obligations and then also build for us moving forward, we're waiting to see how all that shakes out and to see what we have left in terms of building what we believe is a sustainable unit to not only get us through PSL2, but then into PSL3 that will be a couple years down the line.
My next concern is related to, it comes up in item B3, which is our field training officer program. And remind me, I'm not sure if I asked for this report previously or if this was something I was meaning to ask for. I know it's been something I've been wanted to receive, was a report on the selection, evaluation, and retention policies and process related to field training officers. Can someone, Mr. T-Fank or Mr. Sibley, is that a report that I've already requested? And if not, it's a report that I would request.
Mr. President,
Obviously not today, but at some point in the future.
as I recall, it was a report that the Inspector General's office was going to be working on.
They're working on. Yeah. That's your office. And when do we expect that report?
I don't have a definitive timeline for you, but I would imagine within the next 12 weeks.
Okay, great. And just sort of moving down the line, item B4, it references that the department is going to reach out to Dr. Marks, who did our implicit bias training, and Professor Song, who addressed us right here in this room on implicit bias as well, to discuss best practices and methods for integrating anti-bias practices into daily work and training. Where are we in that? Have they been contacted? What's the timeline for that?
Yes, they have been contacted. I'd like to have Dr. Pinnell address that.
Okay.
Morning.
Good morning, Luann
Good morning.
Pinnell. So in regards to moving forward, we are just finishing up on the last few sessions for Dr. Marks, and we've been starting some conversations with him about next steps. Additionally, I work with the community advisory panel around police training, and we had some members of USC put together a literature review on what do we know across the nation around next steps and best practices. And so once everything is completed, we'll probably bring everybody together and have some more substantial steps about what we can do. Again, since implicit bias is an unconscious piece, it's a kind of a challenge in moving that forward. The best practices seem to be ongoing exposure to counter stereotype exposure and contact theory. So when we have positive interactions with our communities, those things build up better interactions overall.
Okay. So when do you think you'll be able to report back on that?
I think, part of that discussion is talking to Dr. Marks and having an understanding where from a timeline and from him.
Okay.
So I can get back to you with that.
So I'm going to ask for, in any event, I'm going to ask for a follow-up report on all these issues in 90 days, so maybe you can report back on the status of that in 90 days.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now moving to item D2.
E2, Matt?
D.
Oh, D2.
So two questions. One is a specific question related to when do you think that special order will be complete? And more broadly, if the department could give us a general explanation of what are the current reportable uses of force?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, which?
D2, this is with respect to the use of less lethal weapons that are in non-contact situations.
I think that's Captain McMahon to answer that question.
Good morning, Commissioner. Good morning, Board. Captain
Morning.
John McMahon, Use of Force Review Division. As the Commission knows, that the use of a less lethal impact device that doesn't make contact has not been treated by the department as a use of force. So we processed it separately. It's something we haven't counted traditionally, but it's something that we can do. I'm going to establish a practice that we do count these things. It'll most likely be in a separate system, but being able to report on that is something that is entirely possible, and we're setting up procedures to make that happen.
Great. I think it's important. I mean, just like we report officer-involved shootings, whether they're hits or no hits, it would be good for us to track when we're using the tasers, when we're using the beanbag shotguns, whether or not there was actual contact. So I'm glad to hear that. And when do you think that will be in place?
Commissioner, a couple of issues on that are important to consider. One is that, because this was a consent decree definition, and we will be changing that's a significant thing that we should talk about. And I'm not opposed to it, obviously, but I think it's something we have to realize that we are retooling something that was done by a prior commission with considerable public input and union input and not done haphazardly. And then secondly, I think it's important that we don't corrupt our ability to compare years past to present, so that we, as John said, that we find a way to keep these tracked and investigated adequately, but separate, so that we can go back over the past decade and a half and make apples to apples comparisons. So, the department has no issue with this recommendation, but we just want to make sure we craft it so that it doesn't take away all of the work that's been done prior.
Sure. Okay.
Good point.
Commissioner, we've had these discussions in the use of force subcommittee. I think that's the appropriate place for us to continue the detailed discussions over that, over this subject.
Okay. And then more generally on the what are the reportable uses of force?
The reportable use of forces are things like your firm grips that result in an injury, things that go beyond a firm grip, the use of any type of physical force, a punch, strike, anything that compels a person to do something with any type of use of physical force. And that, as you go up, that also includes the use of less lethal tools like OC spray, the taser, beanbag shotgun, etc.
Okay.
That make contact with the suspect.
Right.
Once we can have a presentation on that, and as part of this discussion, because I mean it is a system that's been in place for 15 years or more now.
I think that discussion would be valuable, not just for the commission, but for the public as well, to talk about the two different types of we have three categories of use of force. Obviously, we talk about the categorical uses of force a lot, but then the non-categoricals, which we're talking about here, are there's two different categories. And I know we give a lot of those statistics in the end-of-year use of force report. It might be a good idea to have a reminder presentation on use of force.
What I would recommend, if the commission is desirous of cracking open the consent decree agreements and looking at use of force, it might be time to look at a gradation in how we investigate use of force. And I know that the commission often in closed session wonders why we spend so much time on such minor incidents at some points. And so maybe we could look at that also, and maybe have a further gradation of how we do investigations. Obviously, with the lethal force being the highest level, and then working our way down. But I think one of the things that the department is always concerned with is how you balance, just like in the last discussion, training and operations, and same with accountability and operations. I mean, we have to be able to adequately staff our operations division. So I think all of this can be covered at once, and maybe this commission would have an opportunity to recraft some of this, because I think it has been a while, and we have learned a lot in the interim, and there are some things that we spend an inordinate amount of time on that we could trim down, and there's some things we don't spend enough time on that we could bolster.
I agree with that.
Yeah, appreciate it.
And at this point, we were one of the first consent decrees at the first one of this nature that the federal government did.
Certainly
and
the first successful one.
Right. And they've evolved as well, so.
Well, and that's absolutely true. And I know it's hard to see sometimes when it's in the middle of your house, but we are the poster child for consent decrees nationally.
That's right.
And I think that for us to look at some of these things again would also pave the way for other people to do that.
I think it's a great idea.
Next issue on my list is item E1, and this is an important topic related to giving aid, officers giving aid to subjects following a use of force once it's safe to do so. It indicates here that there are ongoing conversations with the city attorney's office and the fire department. I wanted to understand the status of that and what steps have been taken to address this recommendation.
I think your comments are exactly on point, Commissioner, as to those meetings are continuing to occur to figure out what the responsibility is or what the expectation will be moving forward for police officers to provide first aid or CPR. Currently the training has been that they call for a rescue ambulance to respond to a scene, and so those conversations are continuing to occur. What I can tell you, though, as it goes to the new law that was passed in April that has changed not only the quantity of what's being asked for in the state for officers to be trained in, it's also changed the cycle. So essentially we went from a 3-year 12-hour cycle to every 2-year 8-hour cycle, mostly focused on police officers whose role are in an operations or have public contact. There is an exclusion for those police officers that are mostly involved in administrative roles. On its onset, it looked somewhat daunting in terms of getting everybody in compliance, but I'm confident, I can go into detail, but I'm confident that we have a very good plan to move us forward and keep us in compliance as the 2-year cycles come and go.
And is that a certification in both CPR and first aid?
It's CPR, first aid, and the AED device, all 3 of those. So what that required is for those instructors that had previously been certified to teach that. All of them had to go to an additional 8-hour course to get the extra, but now they're certified to teach it all.
I just have a quick question. I did note that comment with respect to this recommendation as well. The recommendation is pretty straightforward, that officers would render aid to subjects following the use of force when safe to do so. And the note here is, I understand the issues around appropriate training and appreciate that that's ongoing. But with respect to the consultation or the discussion that's taking place, I guess I'm curious, are there specific legal issues around liability that are being discussed? And is it that, the fire department, I'm very curious about their role in the discussion. So if you could address, because that seems to suggest that this is not a recommendation that you're prepared to take on at this moment.
Well, I would not suggest that it's not a recommendation that we're not prepared to take on. It's a recommendation that we're moving forward with slowly, carefully, and methodically to make sure that it's implemented as the spirit of this is. The league has issues with this particular recommendation, so we have to move forward with that as well. So we're making sure that we have the appropriate advice and counsel, and that we also have.
Is it in a meet and confer process?
It impact to their work. So yes, it is potentially a meet and confer issue. They also have the fire department, who has their role and responsibility with first aid, CPR, et cetera, and you know,
Can you speak a little bit
when we're
closer to
talking
the
about a use of, when we're talking about a use of force or a shooting, is essentially what we're talking about. We're talking about significant trauma that potentially could be beyond the scope of a police officer's ability to provide more than just first aid. So we're not opposed to it, but we want to move carefully, slowly, methodically, have the right advice and counsel, and then and the right training as well to make this recommendation implementable.
You know, commissioners, I want to make sure that you're not misperceiving the way that the chief feels about this. So a couple of things. One, the conversation with the fire department about giving our folks adequate training so they don't do more harm than good, to make sure that we are adequately able. I think it would be good to do a presentation to the commission, because some of our units that are in the most high-risk situations are already EMTs and already are mandated to respond and render aid and have joint task forces with the fire department to enable them to do that. And I think that would be a positive thing. The second thing is that I've had extensive discussions with the head of trauma surgery at SC about this exact issue. He happens to be in LAPD Reserve. He's extremely interested in training our officers about what to do with traumatic gunshot wounds and how to make sure that you stabilize somebody until the arrival of the fire department.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're very lucky in Los Angeles in that the fire department is our emergency response for EMT, and they are very quick to respond. You know, we don't rely on a private source like some smaller departments. You'll see, you know, in discussions with police chiefs, you know, a lot of places that have private ambulances, you know, their police officers are the primary transports for gunshot wounds. You know, for us, because the ability of the fire department to respond just as rapidly as we do, literally, you know, what we want to be able to do in most cases is stabilize and get them into the ambulance where they can get the right kind of care, rather than in the backseat of a police car where, you know, certainly not ideal, and may do more harm than good. So these are the discussions that we're having, and it's not a reluctance, it's a desire to do this correctly, and to make sure that our police officers understand what's required of them. And so we want to do this, and we're more than willing to have discussions. You know, I think that, you know, I actually talked to staff. I wasn't thrilled about the wording here, because obviously we want to talk to the city attorney about liability, but that's not what drives this. You know, what drives this is human life. You know, and you know, we are extremely liable in many situations that we encounter, and that's not the deciding factor. The deciding factor is what's right for a person. So,
yeah,
so
this goes directly to the heart of preservation of life, and it really isn't always in situations where there's an officer using force. So often our officers are first on the scene. We had an incident just a few weeks ago where there was a pursuit that ended in a traffic collision involving a third party, and but for the officer having been trained as a paramedic, 2 people likely would have died. But for the treatment and stabilizing those individuals, waiting for the fire department to get there. So obviously we have to be thoughtful about it, and I understand we have a, you know, it's not all 10,000 officers you want to train. It's the ones who are actually out in the field and be in these situations. But I think the commission all view this as something very important.
Yeah, if we were to start as we have done with SWAT, that's a good start. But I'd like to expand it to our gang units and move on to other folks that are line and have that responsibility. And what we really need, it doesn't have to be what we're trying to find is not a full EMT course, because I mean, I'd love to do that, but I just can't afford the time. And certainly more than just the 8 hours of first aid. So we're looking for an abbreviated trauma course that we could put our officers through, to stop the bleeding, stabilize the wound, and move forward. So we're trying to create that. That's one of the things that we've tasked USC to do. and we'll keep the commission updated.
And drug overdose is a
Right,
part
and
of it.
actually, we made some progress on, since we're on that topic, came to agreement with the union on that, so we should be moving forward with the antidote prescription.
Great.
Great. Okay, thank you. Next is item E3. So that is in the meet and confer process. I was curious as to how that was developing, and I'm going to make a request that the next use of force subcommittee meeting we can share that draft policy. And I'm not sure that I've seen that. And we can discuss the sort of the status of the meet and confer at the use of force subcommittee meeting. And is having the interviews of non-employee witnesses in level 2 non-CATs, that would not be subject to a meet and confer, would it?
I think it is, yes. And the way that the position of the union, I guess, is all part of meet and confer, so I don't know if I want to get into the details of what their position is, but it certainly is. It's part of our discussion.
Okay.
I'd rather have the ERA address that. I think it may just be consult, but because it is a change.
Be very curious to try and understand what the league's objection to that would be. But
well, we almost never mind consult. Obviously, letting the union know what we're
Sure.
doing is important because it's a good communication tool. Confer is not always the right term.
My next question, I only have one more after this, I promise, is what is the plan for rollout of, I know this has always been a problem because Metro does not deploy to a division every night. They go to various divisions. Have we figured out a plan for docking of the body cameras from Metro?
Dan?
Sergeant Dan Gomez, Information Technology Bureau. So, Commissioners, we've been working with the construction side of the house. We are nearly complete with the construction of the body camera project. We'll be complete in early October. We're on pace with all the installations that we'll be going across the divisions. We've already started to meet with the command staff responsible for Metropolitan Division and SWAT to understand how we can best deploy the body cameras for them. We're currently scheduled to be deployed with them on February 20th of 2018.
Right. That's our last division to get
That is
the body.
correct, sir.
Right. So you're still meeting with them to try and figure out a plan?
We are, sir.
Okay.
And we request funding every year.
Right. And then the last issue is, and again, this is another big issue for this commission, is finding ways to incentivize community policing. So this is G2 in the report, and we are very anxious to find ways to track positive community interactions in the same way that we do arrests and guns and all of that.
Certainly. R.F. Alicon, Director of Constitutional Policing Policy. As you know, Commissioner, the department is also very interested in doing that because we know there's a lot of good work that goes unrecognized and uncounted. Our approach at this point is to try to see if we can use our computer-aided dispatch system, which is used both for the daily field activity and for any activity of an officer in the field. We're working with ITB currently to figure out if there's a code that we can put in to do that. There are some limitations in the current CAD system, but there is an upgrade that's going on, and we want to make sure we can do that. We would also, and we're developing what will constitute community policing, so we have a shared understanding both with the commission in terms of what type of community contacts, and then making sure that it's being recorded and tracked. Once that, police officers watch very carefully what their activity is and all the things that you mentioned. If we start collecting that and counting that, I think in and of itself will be a significant incentive. But more importantly, we'll have a better sense, and we can even comp stat in the various divisions where those sorts of community positive contacts are occurring. So I think by the next time we report, we should have a better sense of the plan to try to implement through the CAD system to keep track of that.
Very good. And when it becomes a part of the ComStat process, I'd like to know, because I'd like to sit in on that.
Sure.
Just on that point, A, as would I, but B, G2 is significantly related to G1, and I've had, a number of conversations with Chief Moore and deputy chiefs around the division, around the department. I think one of the significant things that I'm interested in understanding is the relationship between staffing and community policing and how we're grappling with that issue. It is continues to be of significant, not concern, but I mean, the fact of the matter is being engaged in the kinds of activities that lead to positive interaction between community and police is a function of the amount of time officers have for the calls that they're making. And I think it's difficult to disaggregate those two issues. So as we talk about whatever the incentives are, the tracking mechanisms, as we continue to grapple with how we measure, focus and measure on this aspect of our work, I am, continue to be interested in and concerned about how that is actually operationalized as opposed to, sort of theorized.
Good morning, Assistant Chief Michael Moore with the Office of Operations, and I apologize for the revolving seats here, but I think you just have a passion to talk about these particular items. For community policing, let's be clear that on the ComStat process and how we are running operations, community engagement, as under Chief Beck's leadership, has been first and foremost an eye of importance. It's not crime reduction, it's constitutional policing. Building trust is not just looking in ComStat as what the numbers are for robberies or violence or for all Part 1 crimes. So today, as you go through a ComStat inspection, you'll see questions regarding our immigration outreach efforts with frequently asked questions, but also our meetings. For instance, in this quarter, our commands just completed having in each of the 21 areas designated schools that they were doing outreach for open house and parents' nights as a means of engagement. This past Saturday was a ride for Unity for Peace in South Los Angeles that we partnered with LASO to demonstrate our commitment to recognize those victims of violent crimes, that community engagement. Coffee with a Cop, I was at Churlo with a Cop in Hollenbeck 2 weeks ago. You see this in our social media, you see this in our, not just on National Night Out, but you see this each of our weeks and Facebooks and in Twitter, and I'm quite proud. We have not refined it as to X's and O's to the degree that we have with ComStat. I think this is an area in community engagement. We have calendars today. Each of the commands must produce a calendar of events that they're engaging in, and we evaluate it more qualitatively than we do quantitatively. On the quantitative side, as was indicated in the report, patrol plan has historically looked at directed patrol as the amount of time an officer has available to initiate community engagement. That program some 40 years ago was on the forefront of policing in a sense of how it allocated resources to workload and provided officers with 24 minutes on average an hour to engage proactively in community policing. What we're unhappy with is how that is measured today. If an officer initiates an action, that action becomes directed patrol, and it appears to an outsider that that person's engaged in problem solving. So currently, we are looking and working with the programmer for patrol plan to detangle what is under directed patrol, which, by the way, is about half of an officer's time today, constitutes directed patrol, officer-initiated activity, and the other half constitutes what happens once they are handling a radio call. So we're looking to detangle that so that we can identify just those actions in which community engagement, not a stop, not initiation of a detention, but actual community engagement is going on. And that's what Mr. Alicon's indicating is our CAD system, which we have an opportunity beginning in February. There's a brand new CAD system, computer-aided dispatch, to look at new codes that we can better pull out and assemble information from Southeast Division compared to Devonshire, compared to Northeast, and that's where we're going to see the CompStat process and our management allow us to better recognize those that are achieving the desired results versus those that are not. Long answer, but I think this is such a critical issue here that it's deserving of a more expansive reply.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, just if we could have a follow-up report in 90 days, a new status report in 90 days. I'd also like included in that follow-up report the results of the Dr. Vahida Teams 2 report. I think we've asked for that a couple times, but let's make sure that that's included.
Are you referring to the analysis of
The
Teams 2
analysis
or the
that
working
I think
group
was
report?
done in 2015.
Yes, I can check on the, I think it's actually more recent, but I'll follow up with that and get back to you.
Do we have public comment on this item?
We have 6 comment cards. We have Mr. Herman, followed by Tiffany Guerra and Hamid Khan.
So go. Is this the first speaker?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is, sir. I'm the first speaker. And this is on item E, so on that I'm on topic, Mr. Soboroff. I just came from the next chamber over there. We're celebrating the Jewish New Year, and I'm part of the New Year of celebrating Jewish holidays. Hip, hip, hooray! But because of the comments made by the fine officers before us, I like to ensure that the public has interest in relative response to the Office of the Inspector General. Now, I don't know what kind of Inspector General we have in this city, but I find him biased and racist because he doesn't take the concerns of the public serious. Multiple people come in here and they say to this young man, Mr. Django Sibley, they say to his ass, "What are you going to do to protect our civil liberties under 42 U.S.C. 1983? And he says, local law doesn't apply. But I says, wait a minute, I reported you to the Department of Justice for an issue revolving around a PSD. And it came back to you because Chief Charlie Beck lets me into the public meetings. Thank you, Mr. Beck. Because I know that rookie attorney general, inspector, whatever the hell he's doing, isn't doing shit in my interest, other than I filed my complaint with Washington and I got through. And next time that Sergeant LeFew puts his fucking hands on me inside a fucking public building and tells me, get the fuck out.
Off topic. Next speaker, please.
Is that it? I'm done? Sir, am I finished? You're the president. I'm asking, am I completed by...
Is the time up?
No, I got 7 fucking seconds. Fuck you.
Next speaker.
The next speaker, Tiffany Guerra.
So it's hard to take the recommendations of this report seriously based on the LAPD's failure to identify bias policing in every previous opportunity. IG, you say that you recommend the development of systems to analyze stop and search data to identify potential evidence of disparate treatment or bias. But the thing is, that sounds really awesome, but you already have systems in place to identify bias. It's called the complaint system. It's the quarterly reports and folks that are able to file complaints about bias policing. And what we've seen so far over the last 6 years is that there have been over 2,700 complaints of bias policing filed. And in every single case, it has come back as if it is unfounded. There's not enough information. Nothing has been sustained. Not one time. Folks in LA have been telling you that bias policing exists based on race for decades, but you have not acknowledged this. And we know why. It's because racist policing and the criminalization of minorities is so deeply rooted in this system and in everything that you do, that to confront bias policing would be to confront the whole system. And that's not something that any of you is willing to do. One way the LAPD is not ready to confront its own racial bias is in the way it talks about gangs and tracks folks in gang databases. We've already heard you raise the name of gangs up twice today, Steve Soboroff. LAPD frequently lifts the narrative of gang violence as an explanation as to why it targets black and brown communities and targets black and brown kids. And we know racial bias plays into who is viewed as a gang member and who is a threat. Your entire system is built on inequity and racial bias. So to read the report suggesting that bias policing is something you truly care about is ridiculous. We can see what priority it has. We were here a year ago listening to Professor Song Richardson speaking on racial bias and how it exists in every person. And then today we are hearing about you saying, oh, maybe we should be getting in touch with her to find out about how to possibly reduce this. A year ago, how many people have died because of racial bias and racist policing in that time?
Thank you for your thoughts.
This is not a priority to you.
The next
Call the next
speaker,
speaker.
Hamid Khan, followed by Jamie Garcia.
You've started the time, right? Okay.
There's a lot of terminology being floated around, the constitutional policing, best practices, community engagement, and just this whole facade of doing the right thing. I'm reminded when Professor Song Richardson was in this forum and spoke about institutional implicit bias, and I think what we really need to look at implicit bias both on a personal level and an institutional level as well. Because bias is inherent in LAPD's policing practices. It can't operate without bias. It can't operate without speculating about somebody's suspiciousness. So when you look at the programs, and I think one of the most glaring example, which Soboroff made a mockery of black people just sitting on his seat, was the Inspector General audit of the SAR program in January of 2015. When clearly the SAR program showed that over 30% of these counterterrorism files identified individuals as black. And whenever there was gender count, 50% identified them as black women. So now when you're looking at counterterrorism files, when you're looking at the city of Los Angeles with a population of 9.6% blacks, but you're looking at 30% of these files, what is that? That would be racial profiling, right? That would be biased policing. Not only that, they engage in that, but they have given a license to people to engage in bias as well. What is see something, say something? The same report, the same audit report, repeatedly came back that over 80% of these files come from see something, say something. So you're telling people and you're giving them a license to profile. So regardless of what we talk about it, when that engagement is made, we can talk about use of force, the engagement happens. And things escalate, and somebody is going to die. So rather than sitting here looking at these things, we've been saying that we need to look at that trajectory before the bullet hits the body, and that is really the most convoluted system that we are trying to expose. Thank you.
Jamie Garcia.
So I just wanted to tie in a comment that I think it was Steve Soboroff or Matt Johnson had made a few years ago when he started talking about the benefits of body cameras and how body cameras were going to benefit the community. And the statement was that now that we have all this footage, we're going to be able to sustain some of these complaints that have been made. And I was asking some of my colleagues, how long have body cameras actually been in place now? And they've been in place for over a year now. I think we're looking at 2 years now. And still we're at zero sustained with, in regards to complaints about bias policing. So we're showing already the fundamental failure of body cameras, but again, the repeat pattern of the fact that you are calling us a community of liars. And as we see also in those statistics, that it's majority of the black population that's filing these complaints. So again, the targeted communities are again being ignored, being dismissed, and being told that what they're saying is untrue. And I kind of wanted to just also build on what Hamid was saying earlier, that we can't really unlearn implicit bias when you're in a structure that perpetuates it. And he mentioned the suspicious activity reporting program. We think about stops of black and brown people. We think of programs like LASER, which was predominantly placed in black and brown communities. And so that's where we're targeting, tracking, and tracing people in their homes. And then programs like predictive policing. So people come in with their implicit bias, with their internalized racism, with their internalized white supremacy, and this structure only amplifies that. So I don't really see any type of way of unlearning that unless this system is actually abolished, that it's deconstructed, that it's actually, taken out of our communities completely.
Next speaker is Puppet, followed by Iman Michelle Autry.
Talk about bias policing. Yeah, okay, so that's good. You're keeping my agreement that he has to come here to every meeting and call me a police agent. Well done. How about your threat management unit last year? You file a 422 warrant based on a narrative when there were 16 police officers in the room the night of the incident. You wait 2 days to file for a narrative. Your detective, Eric Reed, is a D3, knows fucking better. Take a narrative. None of the police officers at the public meeting that witnessed the event knew there was no crime and would not sign a police report because they didn't want to fucking wind up here in a discipline charge. So you take a narrative from a self-serving politician and have me fucking arrested on the steps of this building trying to go to a public fucking meeting 2 days later. What kind of shit is that? And how about this guy? You guys, the other 3 commissioners, you elect this guy president? He blocks the fucking doorway after a meeting last year and threatens me under color of authority. And your fucking city is defending that in federal court, saying there's no case in controversy. You remember that shit? And you put this guy back as president? It's like taking cancer from somebody that survived it and putting the tumor back in their fucking head. That's what you've done to this department, putting that guy back in as president. You had to be out of your fucking minds putting that guy in there. He's a defendant in a potential unlimited liability civil rights case currently in court, and you got this guy back as president of your fucking commission. Listen to this is a complete, Mr. City Attorney, this is a complete conflict of interest. You're not even allowed under the charter to have this asshole up here. You can't even do it. But do you give a fuck? No. Nobody gives a fuck. Nobody gives a fuck about the city.
Thanks for your opinions. Next.
Yvonne Michelle Autry.
This is the last speaker on this.
We have one more.
Yes, I'd especially like to support what she said and Hamid said about maintenance of the status quo, where you'd rather incriminate the whistleblowers, the survivors of police violence or racial or profiling, and you'd rather incriminate those of us who are exposing racial discrimination, economically based attacks on the members of our community, or whether it's sexually motivated sexual harassment, rather than actually expose the police officers, the undercover CIA, FBI, counterintelligence that have been in place to maintain status quo. I could say it's white male supremacy, Zionist white male supremacy, the wealthy. Again, we're filing complaints to expose what's happening. Rather than expose the police officers who are racially profiling, economically profiling, sexually profiling, you'd rather continually watch, surveil, harass, torture, and experiment on those of us, especially black women. Yesterday, I had to file a police report because I know that the CIA is hiring, they're hiring their moles and their plants and their police informants to attack me. So then you can build a case against me and then accuse me of being a 5150 bipolar, paranoid, delusional, psychotic black woman, and then, arrest me and then probably murder me and claim that I committed suicide. I am not suicidal. I don't smoke. I don't drink. So you cannot do that here. And these are counterintelligence. This will not be another Waukesha Wilson. This will not be another Sandra Bland, Tyisha Miller, Margaret Miller. Do you understand? For all FBI, CIA, Secret Service, undercover police officers that want to have a hot lunch, they better go fuck somewhere else. Do you understand? I'm exposing this. This is a counterintelligence plan against black women.
We have the last speaker,
And I'm a
please.
survivor. You're exterminating
Thank
us.
you. The last
With a
speaker.
false incrimination and demonization. Your system is corrupted. Your system is corrupted.
Thanks
you
for your
need,
comments.
yes, you
Next
need to
speaker,
expose
sir.
the police officers and prosecute those police officers.
Welcome, sir.
My name is Arthur Newman. The last time I went to a meeting, Western and Adams, after I spoke out, police followed me home. They were crooks. From near surveillance, intimidation, harassment began. I had police officers follow me from Newton Division, where I live, to the city of Inglewood, keep surveillance on me for 5 hours until I left the city of Inglewood, followed me out of the city of Inglewood, back to LA, down Van Ness, and tailgated me all the way. That's not harassment. If that's not a crooked police department, tell me what is. Okay? Now, I have a serious problem with your internal investigations. I said before, they're a farce, they're a joke. And I can prove it, believe it or not. Chief, I was at the academy in '83. I saw the code of silence being taught to 6 cadets. Think back, remember Sergeant Martinez, training officer? Sure you do, who could forget her? Two of these cadets are related to a high-ranking member of the LAPD with stripes from his wrist all the way up to his elbow. He's teaching them the code of blue, the code of silence. I witnessed this. We really need to make some changes. And I would love for you to give me a polygraph test so I can tell you all the murders I witnessed. 8 human beings I've witnessed murdered by LAPD. 8, going back to 1968. I can give you details of some of the murders that only an eyewitness would know, like exactly where the person was shot, how many times they were shot, and the caliber of gun placed in their hand. Oh yeah. Were you willing to give me a polygraph test so investigators can have focus and direction? Because they need that when you go back to some of these murders. And those are just the murders.
Thank you, sir. I'll move to approve the department's
Mr. President,
I'll move to
there is
approve
one
the
more-
department's report.
And one more comment card.
One more comment.
Is there?
We have Mr. Walsh.
Oh, okay, Mr. Walsh. Sorry, Mr. Walsh.
Mr. Newman did not submit a card for this item.
I'm taking the knee in honor of the victims of racism, the NFL players. And we'll see whether Sunday Trump people boycott the games and the stands are empty, or whether those right-wing scumbags show up. Because, you know, right-wing scumbags like black people when they jump on top of one another. Other than that, and I'm a white man, and as a white man, I'm a racist, because all white men are racist. HollywoodHighlands.org. At least I'm honest about it.
Okay, I'll move the department's report.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Commander Maisland, you want to take the?
We're in item 3F, Department's Report dated September 20th, 2017.
Listen, we have a hard stop on this room. So what I'd like to do is move as quickly as we can through the next 3 items. We will be only receiving the report and directing the Office of Inspector General to submit an analysis of the reports with appropriate recommendations. So I will ask for any comments on any of the reports for the commissioners, knowing that these will be coming back to us with the Inspector General. And I guess we have to take the speaker cards separately. So let's do item number. Okay, this is your last warning, sir? Did I give you the last warning already? Okay, so this is your last warning. Okay, so I don't think we need a report. Are there any questions on or comments on item number F?
I have no questions or comments on 3F, G, or H.
Okay.
Wait for the IG to come back to us on it.
Okay. Sandy, same?
Same.
Okay, so do we have
comment cards? Yes.
Comment cards on item number F?
We have 4 comment cards for item number F. We have Mr. Herman, Tiffany Garcia, Puppet, and Yvonne Michelle Autry.
And on number G, do you know?
On number G, we have 4. We have Mr. Herman, Yvonne Michelle Autry, actually 3, and Puppets.
Okay, 1 o'clock. And then on item number H?
And item number H, we have 4, Mr. Herman, DA, Yvonne Michelle Autry, and Puppet.
Okay.
So the
Okay,
first speaker, Mr. Herman.
Herman? This is on F, or you can combine F, G, and H, or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I know my ABCs.
I didn't hear what you said.
I said I know my ABCs, bro. So from F, G, H, and I and I am me, I just want to bring out the discipline report. It's inaccurate, and I disapprove of it. I object. What about item G? Another discipline report.
Well, can you do all of his comments
Sir, you told me to do multiple items. That's what
Okay.
I'm doing.
Carlos, is that
That's
okay?
all I'm trying to do.
Okay, you can go G. Thank you, sir.
You see, when it comes to 54 and 954, I don't like people disrupting my public comment, fool. That's right. So give me some time to collect my mind. I don't come here to exhaust and blow my mind. Reality is all about the game here. Discipline. Department's report, 3rd quarter, touchdown. And let's go to item H. H. Bitch, bitch, bitch. Regarding Assembly Bill 1618, Kevin DeLeon, dated September 20th, 2017. Discipline report, 4th quarter. Now this is where I score. When I'm in the trench, see, Mr. Sobroff, officers should be disciplined before their peers, which is we, the people. The Brown Act states that we have the sovereignty to control every meeting, all meetings, and everything on the agenda. So we are the disciplinaries, not you all folks. So when Mr. Johnson gets off his iPhone and actually listens to the report on all the public comment, because my time's about to exhaust, under 40 TUSC, for the record, fuck you.
Next.
Tiffany Guerra on 3F.
Is it just 3F, or does she have a card in on G and H?
No, just 3F.
Just F. Okay.
So the most important thing for us to note in these quarterly reports, there's a few things. One is that how few of these allegations are sustained, sometimes less than 1%, usually less than 1%. And the second thing is how LAPD is changing the names of the categories of allegations over time and then not transferring data from the old categories into the new categories so that data is not being maintained over time. And I actually would like to have this explained. So if anybody up there is actually paying attention, that would be awesome. So, because this is something that's going to need an explanation. So it has to do with the categories. So we used to have this category for the allegations of the types of complaints of domestic violence. Since 2011, we were seeing this on the quarterly reports. And we would see how many allegations are being filed for domestic violence against police officers. Then all of a sudden we see this new category being introduced on the reports, domestic incidents. We don't have any idea how this is different from domestic violence, but we see that this is a new category, and now allegations are being spread among the different categories. Then over time we see another category come in, that of domestic altercation. So we now have a third category to do with domestic violence, and we see, again, so this is kind of a splintering of categories. And then we see domestic violence just drop off altogether. So we used to have, what I'm saying is that we used to have data about domestic violence and how much these complaints were being filed against officers. But now with these new categories, the renaming of categories, the introduction of new categories, the data isn't getting transferred. So that data is getting lost. My question is, why is that happening? Because we see that in a number of different areas, like false imprisonment, which is something that you see a lot of allegations in. Over time, that's something pretty high. 0 sustained most of the time, or less than 1%. But this all of a sudden has dropped to 0, and now we have a new category pop up that is called detention violence. But again, the data from the old,
Thank you.
it's not being transferred.
Next speaker, please.
So why is that happening? Why is the
Go
reporting?
ahead.
Next speaker we have is Puppet on 3F, G, and H.
So Beck was actually talking earlier about integrity of transferring data from one year to the next and how important that was.
Puppet.
So this is actually something
Who's
that a
that?
white
Mr.
man up
Spindler?
there was talking about earlier. Maybe that'll resonate with
Who's
you a
that?
little bit better. Does
Wayne
that make it any
Spindler?
more important to talk about if I raise
Spindler,
Beck's
are
name
you
in
giving up
association
your
with
time?
that?
You giving up your time?
Am I giving up my time?
No, your time
No,
is
I'm not
your
giving up
time
my
is
time.
finished. Mr. Spindler, are you giving up your time?
No, I'm not giving up my time.
Okay, we'll move on. Who's
Did
the
you
next
even
speaker
understand
then?
what I was talking about?
Next speaker, please.
The next speaker, please, Mr. Spindler.
Does anybody understand the question that is being posed?
Your time's up. You can come back during
You
public
don't understand,
comment.
do you, Steve?
So now I'm going to give you a warning. Your time is up. On this, I'd like you to come back during public comment and speak during public comment. We'll respect your time.
So you can
And
ignore me
hopefully
again?
you can respect the time of the other people that are here.
So you can not listen again? Is that what you're saying? I should put in a public comment so you can say, is this the last speaker? Or
Yes.
is the 2 minutes up?
Yes, that's what I'm saying, yes.
Yeah, so you're at least
Thank you.
openly acknowledging it.
Okay.
Fuck you.
Spindler?
Boo, fuck Steve. Fuck Steve.
So, does Spindler
Fuck
have,
Steve.
on which one?
That's the,
3F, G, and
that's
H.
right.
Okay. So are you speaking on all three or just on
But
one?
I'm going to speak on each one and get my 2 minutes per fucking item, man. We're going to do this jazz.
Go do it.
We're going to do this jazz. The jackass. So here's a jackass moment. Who goes in the middle of a federal lawsuit, takes 2,
You off topic, sir?
4,
Off topic, sir?
5, I'm talking about complaints that were bunched together and issued a final administrative decision 17 months later. Your chief did that. He mailed me a letter going back 17 months on 6 different complaints, bunched them together, issued one letter this year and said he exonerated the entire department of all wrongdoing of all of my complaints. The problem is he did that while he's a defendant in my case. How the fuck do you do that when you're a defendant in a case and make a self-serving statement like that and you call it an investigation? Fuck is that? Who represents the city? Do you even have legal counsel representing the police commission? How can you file that when you're a defendant exonerating yourself on a complaint? 6 complaints. How the fuck can the city attorney do that? And the answer is, because you're fucking stupid, that's how. Not only stupid, it's illegal. It's illegal. And you know it, and I got the letter. You put them all together, I filed my lawsuit, you filed to dismiss it, and then Beck gives me the letter saying, we find no wrongdoing on all of these complaints. Amazing. Self-serving. How do you make an impartial, biased decision when you are taking yourself in a complaint and exonerating yourself through the department? What do you think the federal court's going to say about that? This whole process, the way you adjudicate complaints is completely tainted. The letter proves it. You're not investigating the complaints. They're not being sustained because nobody looks at them. It goes through a computer. They're automatically disclaiming all of the complaints. And now your own Police Protective League representative, Detective Lawley, wants to criminalize filing complaints, claiming that they're false. He wants to put a warning on the complaint form that you'll be prosecuted if the complainant's found to make a false allegation against a police officer. While the police officer can make a false complaint, you know, like last year when you arrested me on a 422A and your phony fucking narrative, you can't be prosecuted. So your complaint process is completely illegal, it's completely biased, it has no fucking merit. And where's the ACLU to issue an injunction to stop it all and make an independent review board of all the complaints for the past 10 years that have been filed in this city? Because every one of them was rejected illegally. Now, we got a Times reporter here in the back, nice-looking blonde lady. You know what she does? She fucking reports on all this commission business. But first, before it goes to the Times editorial board, she clears it with the police chief to make sure he's happy with it. Yeah, she's right here. Her name is Kim Mather. Kim Mather, stand up and give him a hand. She's there every time. Nothing that gets said in this meeting about this will ever make the LA Times.
So this is off
because she's
topic,
the
and I'm
fucking
going
filter.
to, next off topic, I'm
You
going
have
to
a
waive the
press
rest of your
filter.
time, Spindler.
You control the media. You have a press filter working in the Los Angeles Police Department, covering up everything that goes on in this police commission. She's even assigned a special duty.
You've waived the rest of your time, sir. Next
to
speaker,
get a
please.
fucking thing. So where's
Next
the
speaker.
First Amendment in that?
The next speaker,
Jew
Yvonne Michelle
motherfucker.
Autry.
Fuck you.
Ms. Autry?
Fuck you.
Ms. Autry, will you be speaking on each item, or?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. We hold the mic a little closer.
So I get 6 minutes?
We'll start it over.
I get 6 minutes, correct? Wonderful.
I'm sorry, on which items is this?
This is,
3F, G, and H.
So you can speak on any or all of these items,
So this is all of the
if you want to.
Oh, okay. Very good. Again, as the young lady had mentioned, I didn't know that it was in excess of 2,000. A few years ago, through LA Can, of course, there were over 300 complaints that had all been labeled unfounded. About 5 or 6 were my own. In order to undermine one of my complaints because I was sexually harassed by one of your police officers, one police officer followed me. He was a black officer. Okay, another white officer came up behind me and said, "Hey, baby." I was dressed down, walking at San Julian on 6th Street. One other LAPD officer offered to show me his power drill. Yesterday, an officer, Wharton, was winking at me when I had to, and he just kept winking, and and there's a white officer. So I filed complaints, but it's to no avail. Okay, the complaints come back within policy and procedure, and there have been worse complaints, and it's always that our complaints and our observances and our suffering it's completely unfounded. This is ridiculous. I love God, but only God is that perfect, and you are not. And we have brought your flaws before you, so in maintenance of this status quo, we ask again for an oversight committee. That's it first. There will be no rampart conspiracy here. There was a sheriff's officer, Ontiveros, who also was very rude to me. I know that's the sheriff department, but I'm bringing this to your attention because when the people are united, bringing to your attention the inequity, the white supremacy, the economic discrimination, the sexual discrimination perpetrated by LAPD and sheriff's department officers, it is on the record and you are fully liable. It is not biased, it is racial. And the system is to blame, not the people that are suffering. And I do know, again, for the record, that a lot of these fraternity rituals, because of the nature of the Illuminati, and one branch of the Illuminati, of course, is very active within the LAPD force. That would be the alcohol, tobacco, and firearm, not to mention Masonic, Skull and Bones, paramilitary, other secret society groups that have to have sacrificial victims, and that would be, by and large, women, black women, for their sex sacrifices, where we are raped ritually, tortured with electronic weapons for your one world government, Homeland Security. We're harassed by these informants that move in next door to us. They spread lies, in our communities. This would, of course, unfortunately, be what targeted individuals face on a daily basis. You're liable because I believe a lot of these officers are undercover police officers, and we are constantly incriminated. Illegal entries, targeted individuals, our plants, we're sprayed with germ warfare, we're experimented on, we're tortured. And I know that the owner of my building, Mr. Isaac Shomoff, has also retained a cadre of Mexican mafia or maintenance men to target, to harass, to eliminate not just those who are blocking his market rate rent, but those that he considers to be expendable, people that you all have put in the trash. And instead of incriminating the officers that are abusing, surveilling, harassing, stalking, torturing us, you'd rather continue to exploit and torture and then eventually murder us that are surviving, the whistleblowers and the victims, and incriminate us. I am not. 5150 again, for the record, I've never used heroin, and a lot of the lies per suspicious activity reports, facial recognition, you don't like my mouth because it's big and whatever you don't like. Yeah, I'm a black woman, okay? And you have some hatred, of course, historically for black people. You've replaced us with the Hispanic people. I'm not a racist. But I will expose this cadre again of Mexican mafia that are being used, perpetrating against black women in many of the downtown, well, they're not all low income. The Alexandria, the Hayward, the Roslyn, illegal entries. Yeah, putting holes in our undergarments, holes in my clothes, big holes in my towels. Yeah, men's ejaculation on my sheets, urine in my bathroom, and the managers do nothing. But they're going to claim, of course, you know, she's 5150, she's bipolar, manic depressive, psychotic, paranoid, and delusional. So I'm exposing that, not to mention the pedophiles, vampires, cannibals, yeah, that are coming into this country, and they have to feed. Right, probably on the Skid Row population, that highly melanated Skid Row population, which also finances your genetic genome project. So all that brought to your attention. And finally, about the use of electronic weapons. I created a petition to ban the use of electronic weapons because your police officers have to have test sites, guinea pigs, target practice for training purposes. And guess who those targets and guess who those guinea pigs are? Well, anyone. Hate groups and gangs, Mexican mafia, any mafia, gangs, the police department. Okay, right, I'm you know, stalked on the street by misogynistic pedophiles, you know, predators, but then there are also predators within your police your police department. And again, this would be an officer, Tiras, Ontiveros, that's sheriffs, Wharton, Officer Peng. I'd also like to bring to your attention, when I have to file a police report because I'd like to make a paper trail in case I have to defend myself, and then I'm incriminated, right, as not only the culpable, there will be no reversal of culpability here. Again, there will be no other murder here in incriminating me for what someone that either the CIA, FBI has actually retained to destroy another life or to exterminate someone else that you all have put in the trash. Officer Peng. On
Next speaker, please. And we have one speaker on 3H. We have DA.
Before we do that, we have a motion for approval of 3F.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3G. We have a motion for approval on 3G.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, item number H is still open. Last speaker. Yes, sir.
Okay. Oh, so is it 2 minutes or six? Is it 2 minutes?
2 minutes, yes, sir.
I thought it was for the entire section.
No, you only put in a card for H. So you have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Also have a card for general comment as well.
You can come back at public comment.
That's
but
separate?
You have
Okay.
2 minutes on this, yeah,
All right.
on this topic.
Greetings, my name is DA. I'm a local Rastafarian. Stop LAPD spying, Black Lives Matter. I must indulge and talk about myself and my personal experience with LAPD as a reference point in order to compare the truth and reality to the false honor that LAPD, that I see here. LAPD, do you discipline your officers for responsible policing, or do you present this report to create the appearance of responsible policing? From what I've seen, the reality of LAPD ethics is it's hypocrisy. Last Thursday, 2 police agents threatened my job as an Uber driver, saying that they could stop me from getting more work for speaking out against police brutality. Since I am homeless, this could be quite burdensome. I'm homeless due to years of police interference in my finances. They took my organic farm north of LA. They, when I was going to play my soprano saxophone in the street to pass around the hat and make some money, police agent Jay stole my saxophone and amplifier. If I was to return to the contract paralegal work that I did for many years, police have made it clear that I would be attacked again and or assassinated. The LA Times presents the LAPD as honorable, progressive, and helping immigrants, although LAPD pretends to maintain ethical standards by talking about how it disciplines officers. The reality that I've actually seen is they attempted to assassinate me on May 1st, conspired and assaulted me in July of 2014, and caused my bike accident in September of 2015. All that was confirmed by police agents to let me know that they would do it again. LAPD cannot understand that antagonizing people makes them fight back and expose what the police actually do. If police had not threatened my job, I would not have to protect that job by exposing secrets of the LAPD. Exposure being something that causes people, including kids who might have supported LAPD, to lose faith in this undisciplined gangland police force. LAPD cannot understand that physically attacking and following people does not make them and their issues, the issues they present, go away. Because LAPD does not have principles, it cannot understand why someone would endure
We
their
have no other
pettiness
speakers
and
on
be
the side.
inspired and indeed
We have no other
be
speakers.
forced
May
to
we have a
fight
motion
back.
for approval of item number
So moved.
3H?
Racist,
All-
to fight
all
against
in favor?
racist policing. Whether racist gatekeepers at
Let's move on to
LAPD
item
like it
number
or
I,
not,
please.
sharing power between whites and non-whites can be mitigated and must be discussed
On to item
openly,
number I,
or this
please.
society will destroy
Item
itself.
number I,
No
Department's report.
secret
Madam
police. No
Dated
secret
September
police.
20th.
No secret police.
Relative to the bias policing and mediation update, second quarter 2017 report. And we have 6 comment cards.
I think we can go right to questions on this. I think the report was self-explanatory also. Do we have any questions from the commission?
I had just a couple.
Commissioner Johnson?
One, I wanted to point out that as is indicated in the report, that every sworn member of the department below the rank of captain will have taken part in the 4-hour implicit bias training in 2017. This is not a silver bullet, but it is definitely a step in the right direction. Again, we continue to state this and reiterate it, but the mediation program is successful. The people that participate really like it, so we should continue to push participation in the program.
Yes, sir.
One thing, am I reading the report correctly in that, I know this is not a final report for the annual numbers, but are bias complaints projected to drop significantly? Or am I misreading?
At this point, it appears that they are much lower than last year.
Yeah.
I don't think we're ready to say that for the whole year they're going to be much lower, but at this point, the numbers are significantly lower. I would like to add one thing about the implicit bias training, if I could. At this point, just as an update, as of yesterday, 83.3% of the 9,434 target employees have gone through the training, leaving just 1,577 left. So they're well on their way to finishing the whole thing.
And that will be done this year, right?
Well, we don't actually do that, but my understanding is for training division.
It will be.
I'll say yes.
I'll restate it as a statement. There was one thing that jumped out at me, and this is really more for the department, but I thought it was surprising that there were a higher percentage of female officers were bias policing complaints lodged against female officers compared to their percentages in the specialized enforcement and the gang units. And it wasn't a little bit higher. It was pretty significantly higher. Any thoughts on that?
You know, I would just caution when you use a small sampling like this, that can be easily skewed by just a couple of incidents. We haven't seen that over time, and I would recommend looking at it over time because it is a very small
And
sample.
this is the only. So this was the only incident. This year was the first time where it really jumped like that.
That's correct. We noticed that as well, and we have no specific answer for that at this point.
It was
We'll continue to
particularly
watch it.
surprising because usually the incidents of use of force, most everything else, our female officers have less of the less uses of force, less complaints. So I was surprised because I would have totally expected it to go in the other direction. So I guess it's just something we'll just continue to look at.
And we'll look at that, but I do believe that that's just a statistical anomaly caused by a couple of incidents because, as I say, it's a very small sampling.
Okay. I didn't have anything else.
But before we leave this, the mediation program and the quarterly discipline report and so many of the other things that I think the commission relies on to gauge the efficacy of the Los Angeles Police Department are the creation of Stu Maislin. And if I'm not, I believe that this is Stu's last police commission meeting.
Is that right?
Yes. And he has been with Los Angeles Police Department for over 38 years. He has been my strong right hand on the discipline side for almost my entire tenure as chief. And I want to thank him personally, and then on behalf of the men and women of Los Angeles Police Department and the people of Los Angeles for what he's done. I think that people sometimes mistakenly think that because, discipline is, all discipline goes through him, that he is a harsh person or somebody that sees things cut and dried, and I haven't found that to be true at all. Stu, although he is strict and has high standards, will definitely, when he thinks that a police officer is not being treated correctly or got a raw deal through his command, he will bring it to me and recommend adjustments. And his mediation program, and then also the settlement program, I look at many times, as attorneys well know, settlements are the best result because they result in an agreement rather than just a finding. A finding can be contested, but an agreement takes both parties. And Stu has crafted some really good settlement agreements that I think have benefited not only the department but the employee involved and the people of Los Angeles by saving a police officer that has many, many good years left in his or her service. So Stu, thank you.
Stu, can you stand up for a second? Yes. So people see.
All right, Stu.
So I have, through my work on the commission, had an opportunity to work with you quite a bit, and I've always appreciated how thoughtful you are, how diligent you've been, and how proactive you've been with a number of issues that we have interacted on. So thank you for your service on behalf of the commission as well.
Stu, and also I know how much you will miss commission meetings, but I'd like to invite you to come back to any commission meeting as a member of the public and fill out a card and take 2 minutes. But please don't go over the 2 minutes, because that's what we do. Thank you for your service, sir. We have public comments on. I'm sorry, Cynthia.
Yes, I did actually want to say a little bit about the report itself, and I have, I think, been pretty. Have communicated, I think, pretty definitively about my frustration with certain aspects of the way in which we have dealt with bias policing, believing, frankly, that to the extent that you do the same thing over and over, it is likely that you're going to get the same result. I am, however, really enthusiastic and about the mediation program, and want to credit Commander Maislin on that issue or on that program. I think that it's both expansion, it's our move to actually conduct mediations at times that are convenient for a community was a significant change. It has continues to offer a great deal of promise. I also am, pleased to note the progress with respect to department personnel going through implicit bias training, and appreciate the embrace of that effort. And to the chief's, point, believe that we have a variety of ways to think about, to look at, to mitigate. Instances of bias policing, intentional or not, and look forward to our continuing to exercise all of the ways that we have to track, to understand and to mitigate that element that seep into all aspects of human engagement, including policing. And then, finally, I do want to say, congratulations on your retirement. And like Commissioner Johnson, I found our time together in terms of work to be both illuminating and productive, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Do we have public comment on this item?
Yes, sir, we have 6 cards. We have Mr. Herman, Melina Abdullah, Pastor Q.
What item are we on, sir? Mr. Chair? What item are we on?
Aye.
Mediation, correct. I couldn't look you in the eyes regarding mediation, but I figured out why. I'm a creep. I'm a weirdo. And when it comes to mediation, I simply don't belong here. I told you, Mr. Soboroff, I don't belong here. And I feel so bad for many people here today because they don't know what their civil rights are when it comes to mediation. Because every time I come to these public meetings, the conflict of interest still remains why the Inspector General and Chief Charlie Beck sit together when it comes to mediation. See, we can resolve all our civil liabilities simply by just giving us a blank check. Starting with the African-American Michael Hunt, who was arrested by you yourself, Mr. Soboroff, a year ago. 83 arrests. A man wants to work. Having his own business, like we heard earlier. And then we have Mr. Spindler. He brought up an excellent case. The Sentinel. Herb, a.k.a. Herman, Jason Wesson. All these actions, I don't know. See, I'm not an angel. I'm just a weirdo. A man put in a mask to be a creep, to speak about the legalities of mediation. So if we take every case and had pre-settlement litigation to mediate, we could save the city and LAPD lots of money. And I'm there for you, Mr. Soboroff, and that rookie up there watching his cell phone, Mr. Houseboy Johnson.
Next speaker.
Melina Abdullah.
So this bias policing report, I don't know how you all can continue to sit in this horseshoe or on whatever dais you all sit on when there are 2,741 complaints of bias policing and 0 sustained. I mean, that's a mockery, that's a farce, it's clear that the department is never gonna hold itself accountable, and it goes back to something that was said almost a year ago, that it's not bias policing that we're concerned about straight up racism. It's not implicit bias, it's explicit racism that this LAPD is carrying out. And you all, especially this side, I notice they've segregated you now, right? This side, you should be most concerned about it. So this notion of mediation is another PR move for you all to have conversations about how can we advance the so-called good deeds that LAPD does instead of holding officers accountable for blatant racism is ridiculous, and it's how you continue to get down, right? You continue to elevate PR to say, how do we advance the image of the department rather than seriously looking at what the department does to our communities. You're supposed to care about the community, but somehow you've been socialized or duped into believing that his interests are your interests. They are not. Our interests are not their interests. And they continue to show us over and over and over again that they will protect the police state with everything that they have. So the question becomes, what are we going to do, especially when they elect the most blatant white supremacist on their body as president again? No longer just a House Negro representing a blatant white supremacist who continues to belittle the people. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do?
Pastor Q. Pastor Q, followed by Yvonne Michelle Autry.
In 1968, there was a report released. You guys know it is called the Kerner Commission Report. 120 social scientists, government officials, and attorneys looked at policing in the racial ghettos. That's what they called it in this report, the racial ghettos. They determined 2 reasons for high crime in our communities: poverty and racism. Poverty and racism. With that, police increased between 1960 and 1966 by 20%. The commission said this, that there would be attrition between black folks and police, and it would continue to happen. This was in 1967. There would be attrition. That means the decline of the relationship. I will argue there was never a relationship. This is 1968. Dr. King was murdered 2 weeks after this report was released. What I'm saying here is that implicit bias goes back to the foundation of policing in this country. And unless we deal with that, come on, mediation did not work because the system is not broken. It's flawed by design. The system itself is racist. And as a man of God, I have the moral imperative to tell you that. This system is biased, and it continues to traumatize and re-traumatize people in our communities.
Yvonne Michelle Autry, followed by Puppet, and then Mr. Herman.
Yes, I'd like to support what Pastor Q said. Of course, I was born in Inglewood. Inglewood PD also has a history of Ku Klux Klan activity from its very inception, from the very basis of maintenance of status quo when that department was created, in LAPD officers as well. So in light of that, again, rather than incriminating those of us who are not going to stop bringing the police brutality, the racially motivated murders of black men and black women, some Hispanic people as well, the sexual harassment that I continue to have to endure, where I'm incriminated as the seductress and the temptress and the coqueta and the, chinche, chiquitita, vampiro, energía, for those of you that understand Spanish, I speak, read, and write Spanish fluently among 4 other languages. I'm sick of this because your system is maintaining this status quo where it's all right to abuse and rape and ritualistically murder black women or poor women, and your police officers are doing this. The Grim Reaper and the Strawberry murderers were many. They were black men. Some of them were police officers, but the police officers congratulated the one black man that was finally prosecuted as cleaning up the streets. And again, those black men or those black women in those reports were labeled as not human, right? I'm not a chocolate chip. I'm not a Dalmatian. I'm not a chocolate dipped strawberry. I'm not honey. You understand? So this is something that has got to be exposed, and it's got to stop. It's the maintenance of this privilege where you think you can exploit and violate and rape and murder women or anyone that is underprivileged in this white supremacist society. I'd also like to reveal one case where I was falsely accused of being drunk just to undermine my police complaint against one of your officers. To undermine, and so that my complaint was not valid. And I don't even drink at all. At all.
Next speaker.
Puppet, followed by Mr. Herman.
So flawed by design. 3 women, 1 Johnson, and then the evil underneath everything in life. And Cynthia sits there and lets the #1 racist on the West Coast become police president commissioner again. It's unbelievable. Nothing works. The system can't work. It's completely fucked. You can't vote these people out of office. You can't sue and get justice. You don't have the ACLU. You got your LAPD reporter that's going to go back to her desk, and you know what she's going to say?
Well, the meeting went very well today. It was attended very well by a large crowd, and they proudly elected the founder of Staples Center, Mr. Steve Soboroff, to a new term as president. Quote by Cynthia McLean Hill. Jews and blacks are all coming together. They're all coming together now. We had a wonderful meeting.
Last warning, I'm going to,
yes.
You're going to forfeit the rest of your time?
We had a wonderful meeting today, and everything went well. There was no disruptions.
Okay, next speaker, please.
And everybody complimented
Next
the
speaker.
police on a good job.
Speaker, Mr. Herman?
See, I'm trying
Mr.
to.
Herman?
I'm trying to help the LA Times write their fake fucking news story.
Mr. Herman's not speaking then, after Mr. Herman?
Can I? Right. Right. Yeah. 23 fucking seconds.
After Mr. Herman then is
The
who?
clock's fucking running. Even your city clerk knows I'm on topic. I'm trying to help the LA Times write their fake news story about this meeting, and you're fucking interrupting me. Trying to help the fucking system. The puppet's up here, the puppet is over there. We're all fucking puppets dancing in the fucking puppet zone. Okay? So fuck
The next
this
speaker,
shit.
please.
I want you to understand what kind of a citizen
You
I
have a
am.
card in? Sir, will you put a card in for public comment because you didn't have a card in on this item? But you can come back for public comment and take the 2 minutes. Thank you very much. No, we'll follow the rules. Thanks.
Mr. Herman, please.
Thank you, sir.
So you see, Mr. Soboroff, 54,950 to 54,960, the Ralph M. Brown Act. The legislative body must adhere to my sovereignty of what is fucking right in this meeting, which is transparency and the right to be heard in assembly. So let the time run, let Mr. Spindler finish his fucking topic on time of 2 fucking minutes, and then I'll get up. But I don't want to have the conflict of interrupting other speakers.
You're off topic?
All right, what do you want me to say, puppet master?
Steve.
Are you finished?
No.
Tell him what to say, Steve.
So, the matter of principle in this hearing comes forth from the merits of what we've all had to say and implement for the ideas of what we can't comprehend on the course action of discipline and merit. Now, I am not a legal analyst, nor am I a part of the LA Times, but I am here to speak on behalf of public interest and the concerns of public interest, not just to disrupt this meeting. No, that would be wrong.
Do you want to say anything about bias policing and mediation update?
Thank you. Because bias policing continues to be the motion of your emotion, Mr. Soboroff. Look at Mr. Johnson there. Not one eye attention to any constituent speaking other than Miss Cynthia Hill there. And you know why? Because she's a nice woman, and fuck you.
We have no other comment cards on this item.
Okay, we have a motion for approval of item number 3I.
So moved.
Have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, report of the chief. Chief.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. First, I want to start my comments by recognizing and mourning the loss of John Gasparian, Valley traffic officer who was killed in an off-duty motorcycle accident this past Thursday in Porter Ranch. He's survived by his wife and a 6-year-old and a loving family, and it was a true tragedy.
Thank you.
Thank you. One of the comments I wanted to make in general on crime, We had our recent meeting in Southeast, and I didn't get a chance to talk about some of the positive things that happened there, but what I wanted to put forward was Southeast is the area where we have the strongest presence of the Community Safety Partnership, and we believe that that kind of community policing, which was something that came up in your report, has made a significant difference there. And what I wanted to use to highlight that is something that the Commissioner was talking about. How do you track community policing? How do you track community trust? And of course, we use surveys for that. But we can also use some other outcomes for that. And one of the outcomes you can use is clearance rates, particularly on homicides, particularly on gang-related homicides, which are almost entirely solved via statements of the public. And if you don't have the cooperation of the public, you will not solve gang-related homicides. And as I mentioned before, last year in Southeast Division, particularly in Watts, the clearance rate for homicide was 82%. This year, it's at 94%. And I just can't emphasize what a sea change in policing that is. I was the detective captain in Southeast at the turn of the century, this past century, Steve. And our clearance rate was well below 50%, and we were lucky to get it. And I think this just talks a little bit about exactly what I think is at the heart of what the Commission is after. So with that, I'll go on to my general report on crime. We still are showing a decrease in homicides. We have about 11 fewer homicides than last year. That's just under 6% decrease. We have a 9% decrease in rapes and a 12% decrease in number of victims shot this past year. That's 67 less people shot. We're still dealing with a struggle, a stubborn street robbery problem, 7.4% increase. We have an increase in lower level aggravated assaults, not shootings or stabbings, but bodily force related. And that's about a 3.4% increase. And property crime is pretty static with last year at about a 0.6% and less than 1% increase. Guns recovered, part of the mayor's hallmark program for the next couple of years, and our focus is to recover guns off the street because of their use in violent crime. We've recovered 4,513 guns off the street through the end of August. That's 11.4% increase over last year and a 20.7% increase over the 5-year average. Traffic collisions, another signature program of the city. We have reduced traffic fatalities by 6.3% so far year to date. Still have far too many, especially pedestrian-related fatalities, and in fact, pedestrian-related fatalities have increased, and we have 16 greater pedestrian fatalities than we did last year at this time. We have a graduation this Friday. Those recruits are already included in these numbers. We have 9,992 sworn personnel on payroll, 2,855 civilians, and about 400 reserve officers, and 2,172 cadets in our program. And that completes my report.
Not a question, but I did have a comment. This goes to something that occurred in South Bureau this weekend. I think Commissioner Johnson may have made reference to it earlier in the course of the meeting. This past weekend was the National Day of Remembrance for Victims of Crime, and in South Bureau, there was a significant occurrence that I had the privilege of participating in. It was quite something to assemble at 77th with members of the community, a number of whom had lost loved ones to violence, and even more remarkable to walk a 5K with those individuals, accompanied by, not just protected by, but accompanied and supported by members of South Bureau. The reception that the community members and our officers received in the course of that engagement was was really quite something, and I just wanted to commend the department and the officers that helped to make that possible.
No, thank you very much, and I think that sometimes that goes unnoticed or at least is not discussed thoroughly, is that police officers are impacted by the violence in the neighborhoods they serve just as residents are, and you know, much of my thinking on what works in reducing community violence is formed by my experiences, and I think that the strong emotional support and response by the police department to the victims of violent crime is a very natural thing, and something that is highlighted by the march that you talked about. There's another event that South Bureau does annually for victims of homicides around Christmas time that I would also recommend to you. It's a Christmas tree ornament program where the pictures of their loved ones are put on the tree, and the detectives are there to support them and discuss progress on cases and that kind of thing. And it's a very dramatic showing of support, but also to remember just how many people we lose. I mean, I talk about crime stats every year, every week, and you know, these are not just numbers. These are people, and even though we're doing very well, there will still be almost 300 people killed in the city of Los Angeles this year by homicide, and well over 200 of them will become because of gunshot. And you know, this is what Los Angeles has to deal with. This is the true ongoing crisis of the city, is that we lose far too many young people to gang violence, and it's very important to have that discussion.
Public comments?
We have 4 public comment cards. We have Mr. Herman, Prentice Jenkins, Puppet, and John Walsh.
Well, we all know that statistics don't tell the truth. And for the record, there's been a rash of violence in Los Angeles. And no fault to the police, but these are police issues. And the police must address these issues. Home robberies? Really? For God's sake, America's so safe. We might as well just go nuke all those North Koreans right now and get it over with. Because if we're gonna flex power, let's do it. But apparently, this commission and police department have a conflict of interest between each other. Because as they're chasing each other's tail, they're not dealing with the issues of crime and violence. And that's why I'm so special. I have the chance to come in here and say what I have to say regarding how law enforcement, our rank and file, deserve to be paid more money and get their goddamn raises now, Eric Garcetti, so they can get out there and combat crime. Otherwise, as I said, I'm a creep. I'm a weirdo. But what the hell am I doing in here dealing with a Jew? I don't belong here. No, I don't. Sweet LAPD, help me
Clock working?
fight crime. I'm dealing with crime. Can't you see?
Next speaker,
Prentice Jenkins, please.
Mr. Jenkins.
Prentice Jenkins, Peace Between Residents and Police. I want to show a video that describes, this is a new phone. I got rid of my 2014. Actually, it died on me. So I'm having a love affair with this one.
Sort of hard to see it from up. In fact, I can hardly see.
As a 22-year-old woman was being loaded onto an ambulance, but an LA firefighter told him
Okay, essentially what happened is a crazy LA firefighter, because them dudes are crazy, absolutely mad. They're psychotic people. The chief knows it. Most cops know firemen are crazy. All that noise you hear out there, they're not going to emergencies. They're stalking me. Crazy fools. You hear them hit the siren, and then they turn it off, and then turn it on again. This fool, what he did was he decided this man couldn't videotape. So what did he do? He ran and he got a police officer. Come on, I need you to get this stuff started. He wanted the cop to come and shoot the guy. And what happened was, because you've talked about de-escalation, a police sergeant came in and said, hey, get your butt back here. He can tape if he wants to. And what this crazy fireman did, he left his patient to start some mess. He left a patient just to start mess because a man was videotaping. That's how psychotic they are. They suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. And he just wanted to start a fight. That's all he wanted to do. Left his patient to start a fight. But because of you talking about de-escalation.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
Puppet, followed by John Walsh.
They put you at the end, man. So let's see. The reporters in the back, they're getting tired. They're turning everything up. Channel 2, Channel 4 want to go home. Yes, for the record, he gave Steve his Sig Heil. Yeah, that's true. My attorneys told me not to do that while the litigation's pending, you know, but
They're
Sig
right.
Heil, okay, I can't help. It's a reflex. When I see a Nazi, I give a Sig Heil. It's a reflex. So, your little recruitment reports, department strength, yeah, you're getting up to 10,000 cops. All right, that's the good news. The bad news is that they can't police. See, selective policing is what the department orders. 95% of your cops will go out there and reduce the crime, but you don't want that. Your job is to use the police department as a civil rights weapon against anybody that goes against your leadership. That's what it is. And that's what the LA Times isn't going to write about. That's what those reporters aren't going to write about. Every time I turn on KNX, Channel 2, you know, if Spanish media, I'm the biggest racist on the West Coast. Every fucking time something gets exposed in these meetings, I never read about it. I read all their junk, that Kim Mathers junk, the LA Times junk, the fucking Daily News junk, the Channel 2 junk, Channel 9 junk. They're all run by the same corporation. The same corporation owns 90% of the media in this city. That's why you get away with your crime. We don't have a fourth estate. We don't have a free press in a city of 4 million fucking people. That's why you can kill anybody you want, and Kim Mather will say it was justified. You can exterminate anybody you want, and the LA Times will tell you it was justified. What a big fucking party, and I'm not a member of it.
Mr. Walsh.
John
sir.
Walsh.
Taking a knee.
Taking a knee. You know, I've lived in other countries, and from what you said here today, in most other countries, you'd be taken out and shot to death. That's why I like America. They don't take us out and shoot us to death. They will, and they do that in countries like France. All the white countries do that. Okay, this building's a fire trap. I'll mention that under public comment. Okay, it was hard to understand the crime report of the chief of police, but I did understand it, and what he said was crime is up 26% over a 5-year average. Crime, I hope you heard that. Crime is up 26% over a 5-year average. And I don't need to go on and on and on and on and on till my time is up. I made my point.
We have no other comment cards on this
Okay, let's
item.
move to public comments.
Public comment, we have 9 comment cards. We have Jerry Dietrich, followed by Mr. Herman and Arthur Newman, who's not present.
See upstairs.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jerry Dietrich, and I'm with Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. But I got to tell you something, man. I'm glad you came here. I know you came, other than having it at the police commission. I understand that. It's a horrible place over there where we are in the belly of the beast, and it's better here. But I've been freezing since I've been sitting here. I'm just so cold. Anyhow, that's on the end of the talk. Anyhow, I've been attending your meetings for quite a long time. I believed the police commission was supposed to be the liaison between the LAPD and the community. According to your website, quote, commissioners serve as a citizen's voice in police affairs and as a means of ensuring more responsive and reflective city government. The commissioners' concerns are reflective of the community at large. The commissioners' concerns are reflective of the community at large. I can't believe that. I had to repeat it. Because all I see is a group of people here to support what the LAPD does, blindly following Chief Beck's recommendations. In order to hear what people want, you have special meetings in the community, like the one last week in Watts. That meeting was attended by 200 to 300 people saying many different things. Did you listen? When I come here and talk, I feel you look at me as one of a dozen, as another one of a dozen or so that comes to these meetings and says the same things. But when I come here and talk, I feel that I represent thousands of citizens who can't be here to tell you what you need to hear from the community. When LAPD most recently wanted to use drones, they told you that part of the approval process, they were going to hold 4 meetings in the community to see how people felt about the drones. The attendees at these meetings overwhelmingly rejected drones. Like 95% of them did not want drones. And I'm here to say, we all say the same thing, no drones.
Next speaker.
Mr. Herman, followed by Prentice Jenkins.
Chief Charlie Beck, September 19, 2017. Ditto what Mr. Spinner brought out about ditto paperwork. This is regarding CF number 17000776. Dear Mr. Herman, correspondence to advise the Los Angeles Police Department is continuing to actively investigate the complaint you reported on April 3rd, 2017. Any questions regarding the matter may be referred to Sergeant Henley Hawkins, Administrative Investigator, Division of Internal Affairs Group. Well, let me advise you, gentlemen and women, no one's gotten back to me. No one. And this is likely the issue regarding my service dog. At the time when Sergeant LeFew and Sobroff and you, Mr. Johnson, illegally kicked me out of public facility called a building. And needs to stop. People may go to public events, people may have their say-so and vent and de-escalate what the fuck they see going on in this city. Is there anything wrong with that? No. So you should understand that these fucking generated letters should be signed by someone who really cares about humanity, like Michael Moore, a real person. He listens, but he doesn't want to be charged with all this investigation crap. This is Chief Charlie Beck and that dumbass Jew up there who continues to violate the Brown Act. The sovereignty of we the people delegate our provisions of what free speech, free assembly, and the right to be heard, First Amendment, 14th Amendment, 8th Amendment, and my Second Amendment to fucking bear arms. So fuck you and deal with my investigation.
Okay, if I could, Sergeant, can you talk with him to follow up on that point of contact and make sure we're getting back with him? Thank you.
Prentice Jenkins, Peace Between Residents and Police. De-escalation, folks. De-escalation is working. I saw it this week. This right here. Crazy fireman just wanting to get something started. And a police sergeant stopped it all. That man should have been face down on the ground dead. Because he called the police. The cop came over and he wanted to get into it. But the police sergeant went over and grabbed them all and said, come on back here. He can videotape if he wants. And sure enough, that man didn't end up like Brendan Glenn. This is a credit to the police commission on de-escalation. A sergeant stopped it all. He stopped the madness between a crazy fireman, the 1% fireman, and the 1% cop. The 99% cop came in and stopped it all. It takes the 99% to stop the 1%, because the 1% are winning. If you don't get the 99% to stop those 1%, there are going to be more deaths. I have it on tape that the 99% stopped it all. And a man who was just videotaping is alive today because the 99%, the one that I keep talking about, stopped it. And I'm talking to every 99% police officer in here. It's your job to stop the 1%. You don't stop the 1%, people are going to die. They can't stop the 1%. They're not out there. The commission's not out there. You're the ones that are out there. You know the 1%. You heard them talking in the police station. I heard them over here once at the Board of Police Commission. Guy came in and said, was talking to another police officer. She was a female, and he said, I don't like women telling me what to do. And she said, what? Yeah, I don't like women telling me what to do. That was the 1%.
DA, not present. Victoria Stockton.
I was really hoping to address Charlie Beck. I had called 1-877 Ask LAPD for a Keep the Peace call on August 4th. He lied about what happened that night to the LA Times, and I really wanted to look him in the eye and ask him why he had done that. I also wanted to follow up on a police complaint that I filed against him where I called out Barry Montgomery. Beck had directly contradicted his statement. I've not received a copy of the acknowledgement yet on that police report. Like I said, I handed it over 2 weeks ago to one of the IGs, and I was hoping to be able to follow up on that, but who I handed it to isn't here today. Does the public ever get an opportunity to address Beck and ask him why he lies to the media? I was a witness, and he blatantly lied to the Times. He said that I was a he. He also said that Todd stood up and faced the officers. Todd had his back to the officers the whole time. He was starting to turn around to look and was shot through the arm into the chest. He never stood up. I was in the goddamn room. I was in the goddamn room. Your officer lied. The officer screamed one time, "Sir, drop the weapon," then bam, the gun went off right in my ear. It's bad enough that you guys killed your officer. I can't even say you guys. I don't want to bunch you all together like that. It's bad enough that your officer killed my boyfriend in the last 3.5 years. I was with him 24/7. This has been very difficult for me. But I'm also now suffering from PTSD from the gunshot going off in my head. I would like to address at some point, Mr. Charlie Beck. Does the public ever get to do that? Can anybody answer me? Because I thought that was the point of having these meetings, was for the public to address our masters here. Does that ever get to happen?
Mrs. Stockton.
Mrs. Stockton, if you will
See who? Because I saw someone the last time and I handed you a report and there's nothing. I get nothing. There's no response. I can't address what I want to.
We let him respond to you?
Mr. Stockton, if you will wait right back in the corner there, a sergeant from our chief of staff will talk with you and hear your concerns, and also ensure that people from our family support unit are in contact with you.
Oh, you mean Ruth Ann Chavez?
Next speaker, please.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, zero support. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker, Yvonne Michelle Autry, followed by John Walsh and Puppet.
Yeah, I'd like to say that the reason why a lot of us come here and we repeat the same grievances, we bring the same issues before you, is because it's persisting. The racial profiling, economic profiling, sexual profiling, and when it stops, then we won't have to come here. Nobody's paying me to come here. Yeah, I'd rather be doing something else. I'd rather be trying to work, even in the system where fewer black people are employed right now. They're more Hispanic people because this is the nature of this order at this time. Whereas, you know, I'm still waiting for my reparations, 40 acres and a mule. The Latin people have replaced the black people as the workforce, so that's going to be, I guess, fueling your prison industry. So that's not going to happen here. You hear one of the testimonies of DA, all of my computers, my keyboards, my printers that I can use to make money have been disabled. I believe it is by the Hispanic, not just Mexican, quite possibly the Mala Salvatrucha, maybe the El Salvadoran gangs, that the Jewish owners of my building are retaining to persecute and to illegally invade our rooms, to destroy any means that we have of making money. Right, because then we become, you know, again, the prostitutes, the hot lunch, super hot exotic fantasies for you oath-taking secret society members. And I'd like to also expose that the black men that were killing the black women are in worship, or they protect the white female, right? That would be in the hierarchy. So I need to expose that big brother, big blue. And this is a very serious inner circle. And again, and there were black men, white men, and Hispanic men, unfortunately, that were perpetrating, murdering, and still dismembering black women, and only the final call reported that. My mother had been warning me for over 20 years, Michelle, be careful, because no one is reporting it, and women are being dismembered, decapitated, and these men are boasting about exterminating the trash in the street. So I want that on the record.
Mr. Walsh?
And when these injustices
Walsh,
stop, we don't
thank
have
you.
to
Your
come
time's up.
here anymore.
Mr. Walsh?
Because the Jews control this. So you're responsible for God. That's why they say they're Zionist Jews in name only, but are synagogues of Satan.
Mr. Walsh?
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org or J. Walsh Confidential, tweeting at Hollywood Dems. Now, this building, we're all in danger because this building is a fire trap. Go to the meeting and watch it from September 8th, Friday. You hear the fire alarm. Why was the fire alarm? The entire building was evacuated. No story in the Times. I found out why. Because the fire sprinkler system burst in the basement. Because everything in this building is so antiquated. We could all be burnt alive, but they don't want to put this in the paper. The building was evacuated, but September 8th, go check it, watch the video. But why didn't they do anything about it? Because they're afraid. They're afraid that the Olympics will cancel. We already found out that the Olympics is corrupt. Swiss corruption? I never heard of such a thing. Their shit's supposed to smell, isn't supposed to smell. I'm telling you right now that this system, this city, this building is a fire trap. And compare the fire safety in this building under the LAPD to the fire system over at the county under the sheriffs. When you're at the sheriff's building, you're protected. When you're over here, you could be burnt alive. There is absolutely, it's a fire trap. I can't believe that this building was evacuated. Not one damn story in the LA Times or any news. But you can see it on the video, HollywoodHighlands.org.
Okay, last speaker.
So, time to end the puppet show. But please join us in the other building for the 1:30 Police Commission meeting. We're going to have that over there at your closed session items. Yes. So, see, he makes a good point. Your fucking LA Times doesn't report the truth about what's going on with this city, like it's bankrupt, for starters. I filed 2 lawsuits, completely good, solid claims. Where's my settlement offer? You guys don't fucking quit while you're ahead, man. It's like no deposition been taken yet. Nobody's going to ever have to take a deposition. You fucking settle it. You're fucking stupid. I got lawyers from the city making stupid phone calls. I want time to answer. You don't answer that. You default. You settle it with a confidentiality agreement. So you keep this fucking shit quiet. So asshole media don't ever know what you really done to me. The fake 9/11 call on March the 30th, done by whom? Say, I got to do this. Mayor Stafford did it. He called the 911 call and nearly got me killed March the 30th, claiming I had a gun in the fucking car. That was a mayor's staff that did that. See, I